Greetings and salutations, everyone. Live from the dark side of the moon in the blue cheese room. This is the Lupo King. Greeting. My name is Rick. I am the Lupo King, and I want to welcome everyone to DM's After Dark. A little housekeeping first. Please check out our patron page. Please make sure you like and subscribe to all of our videos on YouTube. Please make sure you donate and follow this channel. And please make sure that you visit our sponsor, Comic Book World, at comicbookworld.com. They deliver all of your tabletop role-playing needs, plus Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Warhammer, comic books, t-shirts, paraphernalia, anything that you need to play games, they've got it, and they ship to the lower 48. They will ship outside of the U.S. If you send them a letter, send them an email, and talk to them about your order. Also, down below, you will notice the Extra Life donation. We are trying to raise money for Extra Life. They donate all of their money to the Children's Miracle Network, which goes to fund children's hospitals around the world. This money will be going to the Children's Hospital of Cincinnati, which is near where I live. And they have taken care of my children. They've taken care of my friends' children. So please donate what you can, $1, $5, anything to help. They run almost entirely off of donations and grants. So please, please help out. That being said, I'm going to introduce to you tonight our 4 wonderful DMs that we're going to be talking to today. We have first to my other side, be to my right. Be Isbeth from the Nat 30s. Above her is Ectherion. Next to Ectherion is, Lundy. Yay, Big Lundy. Everyone, if you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself, that would be awesome. And go ahead and plug whatever it is that you do. Izzy, go ahead.
Sure. So I'm Izzy Beth. I'm the DM for the Nat 30s. We run the Tyranny of Dragons right now for my group, the Bums of Greenest. Also kind of play random video games sometimes. We are currently doing a couple of giveaways on our channel over there. We play on Tuesdays and Saturdays at 9 p.m. And then I'm also doing some DM prep sessions on Mondays at 9 now. I switched it up because Critical Role is back on Thursdays, and I wasn't trying to keep that. So, and I'd also like to watch it at some point. So you can
for some reason I'm hearing
help
like an echo.
Be a better DM since I've only been doing this for about 6 months. So
sorry, that's my fault. I totally screwed something up. Give me 1 minute.
Changed your scene, you silly Billy.
No, I clicked on what I thought was one thing, and it was actually the MP4 file that you sent me from the original one. So I was playing our first episode over our new episode. I'm sorry, Izzy. Please go over that again. I was looking for something, and it popped up, and I was like, oh, here it is. And it just started playing.
So we play Tyranny of Dragons, kind of like modified, I guess, a little bit, campaign on Tuesdays and Saturdays over at the Nat 30s. And I also do some DM prep on Mondays now at 9 p.m. That's 9 p.m. Eastern time for all of our streams. And yeah, I'm a new DM, only been doing this for about 6 months. We started in person and had to obviously move online back in March.
Go ahead.
Hi there. My name's Chris Bodden. I go back Therian basically all over the internet and a certain savage banana on Twitter. I run the Gems of Blood campaign on Mondays at 7 EST. Yeah, 7 EST. Sorry, I'm Central Time, so like adding an hour, subtracting an hour. It's all math and whatever. Anyway, so it's
We don't do math in D&D all the time.
it's crazy ass pirate adventure. It's set in Oregon, the same as some of Rick's campaigns, as well as all of Mark's campaigns. And sometimes I stream as well. Sometimes it'll be artwork. I like to draw, and then other times it's just whatever video game comes to mind.
All right. Lundy.
Hello, everybody. I am Big Lundy. You can find me on my own Twitch channel sometimes, though recently I haven't really been streaming too much on that one because on Mondays and Thursdays, the 2 days in which I do DM games, my players are actually the ones who stream them. On Mondays, it's Tabor Snapping on Twitch, and on Thursdays, it is TVRNA, both at 7 p.m. EST, which, can sometimes be a little bit of a problem scheduling-wise. But at the same time, we have ourselves a lot of fun. All of my players are really good memers, really fun to play with, really good at joking around. The banter is great. I also, of course, play and DM the Mark Knights games on Tuesday nights and Wednesday afternoons, and I also play in Loophole Kings game on Sunday evenings as well. So I've got a lot of stuff that I do. Almost none of it is on my Twitch channel. So, it's just kind of how it goes sometimes.
And of course, I am the Loophole King. My name is Rick. I play in Mark's campaign, DM Mark Knight's campaign. I also run a game on Sundays that is in his handcrafted world that we are building from the ground up. And I also do this, DM's After Dark, which is our DM roundtable that we enjoy talking and discussing things that most DMs either need to learn, should learn, or already have learned to tell other DMs about. So, we're going to get started with a really easy question, and since Ak is the first one, is the new guy on the block, we're going to start with you. How do you feel about homebrew classes in your game? Because this has come up a couple of times in the past few days for me and Alex.
Oh boy. Do I have opinions about all sorts of things? Typically, homebrew classes only work when the players are willing to work on balance with the DM. If you expect, so before I joined Mark's group, I was part of a group called Yasta online, and they tried this whole persistent world thing, and they had a bunch of homebrew classes. Frankly, none of them made sense inside the context of the game world, and as a result, balance was fucked. Sorry, are we allowed to say that?
Yeah, we're after 10 p.m. Just don't say it too often.
Okay, cool. All right, so balance is a huge issue. As far as I'm concerned, there is a big, professional game designers know how to properly balance a game. As far as homebrew subclasses, I'm much more flexible on than homebrew base classes, mostly because they I've seen some of them. They are a nightmare to balance. The rules aren't very clear, and sometimes the grammar and wording is horrible.
Yeah.
So personally, I'd have to curate it myself.
Yeah. Like the stuff you find on D&D Wiki, most of that stuff is,
God.
or D&D Reddit. What about you, Izzy? I know we've covered this a little bit before, but how do you feel about, as a DM, just if one of your players like, hey, I found this on D&D Wiki, and this looks like really fun and really cool. Can I play this since my character died? And they come to you and
So currently, my answer would very likely just be a no, because I don't know enough to make it work. I just haven't been DMing enough. I've played for a long time, but I didn't have to know all of the things, and I don't build classes. I go off of what is written and the rules that are there, and if someone came to me and wanted to completely use a like homebrewed class, I'd probably work with them on like, what is it that you're trying to achieve, and maybe we can build like a way for you to get there or close to it in an existing class. Like, what is your goal? But with an entirely homebrew, I wouldn't be able to make it work, because I just don't know enough yet.
Right.
In a few years, maybe, but right now I'm just trying to focus on understanding the world and the rules, and making sure people are enjoying themselves. And I'm already spending so much time on that I don't have time to like try to learn a homebrew class and figure out if it is, like you said, like balanced enough to make sure everybody else is having fun, not just the player who found it.
All right, Lundy, you and I have more experience. And I forgot to ask, Ack, how long have you been DMing? Not just playing, but DMing.
So I started DMing back when 3.5 came out.
Yeah. Okay.
He's got a similar level of DMing experience that I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Lundy, what's your take on the homebrew? I know we discussed it a little bit last night because of what's going on, but share for the class.
Just in general, I'm very laissez-faire when it comes to that sort of thing. Like, even in 5th edition, where I think that most things are like fairly balanced around each other, and most of the classes basically fill their roles, and adding more classes can sometimes just step on the toes of other classes, so there's not really a whole lot of reason to do so. Subclasses don't generally have much of an issue with people trying to homebrew some stuff like that. But my general rule is, somebody comes to me and they're like, hey, this is a homebrew thing, and I was wondering if I might be able to use it in the game. My default is just let me take a look at it and I'll see. Now, more often than not, it isn't balanced, but I'm not necessarily all that concerned with that. If it's a new player, like a brand new player who just doesn't even freaking know how unbalanced it is, then I might just let them do it just for the funs of it, just so that they can experience what it's like to play a class like that. If I have like a group of players who are like somewhat experienced, sometimes I'll put it up to a vote. I'll like throw it in to like a chat with all of the players. I'm like, everybody go ahead and read through this. If you guys are okay with a player playing this class, be aware I will also make NPCs of this class who may or may not be enemies. So if this is allowed by you guys, I'm going to do it as well. And generally, the more experienced players will, once they understand that, they'll read through it and try and make sure that it's not something that's going to absolutely destroy them.
Yeah.
And so I don't have that much of an issue. If they do decide, like, yeah, we're fine with this, then cool. I will follow through on what I said. I will make other characters who have this in their abilities. So that's just something to be aware of.
Players are a lot more lenient when they get to use it and the monsters don't. But when you say, oh, by the way, the bad guy's going to have this skill too, and they go, well, maybe we should rethink how that works.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and make a class where you at level 3 you have the ability to when you perform an attack action, you have the ability to make a weapon attack against like 4 different people, all so long as they're all within 60 feet of each other, and you can do this like 5 times per short rest. All right, well, I'm gonna make enemies who are able to do the same thing,
Yeah.
and that's gonna be pretty devastating for you when you get
Yeah.
outnumbered by them too.
Yeah, don't be mad when the 6 pirates that you run into all have this ability.
And if they're fine playing with it, then I'm
Okay.
cool with it.
Yeah.
Because the thing is that my main goal when as a DM is just, are my players going to have fun?
Yeah.
And if they tell me we would have fun if this was happening, then fuck it, we're putting it in the game.
Yeah.
That's just what it is.
Yeah,
That's kind of my general mentality on it. I'm very laissez-faire for the most part.
I come down somewhere between the two of you, Ack and Lundy. I'm okay with it, and I've allowed it before, but it has to be something that is balanced. Like, I won't take any unbalanced. I guess, like we were talking last night. My first example was what Izzy did. Is this something I could do with a pre-existing class, or could this person be a sorcerer, multi-class warlock, and get the same? Can I do what they want in the existing system? If yes, then no, I won't allow it, because then that takes away. Because I don't like taking away from the pre-existing characters to let them do, well, oh, so you have all the abilities of a paladin and all the abilities of a druid and some warlock stuff. No, that's you kind of pull away from things like that. Now, if it's really well done, it's something that's been worked over, or it's something that's in a supplement to books that have been published. Like anything that's made it to print, that has been kickstarted and made it to print, as it were, like the Dragons of Odyssey book. I really enjoy those classes. I really enjoy those. Well, I'm sorry, the subclasses that they have and some of that stuff. Like Actherian said, I'm more apt to let them play a homebrewed subclass than I am an actual class. That's much easier to balance because the core is still what you know. But sometimes, if we're just having a goof off, it's like, what do you guys want to do? Oh, we want to play some of this. I'm not opposed to the characters sitting down and go, we all want to try these homebrew stuff and just, let's see where it goes. Okay, I've done that before. Everybody's playing a homebrew race and a homebrew class, and we'll just see how it goes. Sometimes it goes okay, and sometimes you're like, oh, wow, you get to do that how often? All the time? Yeah, okay, well, that class won't ever be allowed in my game again, right? That's just like, oh, well, the slider went a little too far with that. But yeah, like I said, I'm mostly okay. Like you said, as long as the players are having fun, I'm having fun. That's what we want as DMs. If our players keep showing up, we'll keep doing what they want.
See, that's where you run into a bit of a double-edged sword, because it's like that's why I try to curate the classes. I'll try and make sure that I've done test rolls. I've got a couple of friends that I'll do test encounters with in order to weed out the shit, as it were.
Because sometimes, obviously, somebody will make a class and they'll want to play it, but they don't, and they might say, I will have fun if I get to play this. But players don't always know what they're going to find fun. They might think it's going to be fun. They imagine it in their head it's going to be fun, but then they play it and they're like, actually, I'm just steamrolling everything. This is not fun at all.
Yeah.
Right. And when there's, like, say there's more than one player, like, obviously there's going to be more than one player in your campaign. So you want to avoid taking fun away from the other players.
Yeah.
If you're playing a class that gives you like 3 extra attacks on a bonus action, then nobody else is going to be having fun, because you're going to blenderize everything that you fight before you ever get before you ever get anywhere.
Yeah.
With the campaign.
It's like 3.5. Like 3.5, the biggest problem with 3.5 was the fact that you could literally craft anything that you wanted, and it was absurd. It was just bananas.
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest problem with 3.5, and the thing that I really loved that they did with 5th edition, is hard cap at level 20.
Yep.
You have to trade.
You can level past 20 in 5th edition. It's just it works differently.
Yeah, it just works.
You get epic boons, and epic boons are awesome, and you got to earn that. You got to earn them.
Yeah.
And it's like there's no like hardwired leveling mechanic for after 20.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you want the 20th level class abilities for a specific class, you've got to stick with that class.
Yeah.
And there's a trade-off there.
How many people actually play up to level 20 in a campaign? That's kind of rare.
In 5th edition, I have reached it once.
Yeah, it doesn't happen that often,
No.
which is why they structured the classes the way that they were structured in the first place, because they did a poll and they asked people, what level do you usually end campaigns on? And
7.
Most of the time, it's like they end like 12 to 14.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they were like, well, let's just put all the fun shit from 12 to 14, and
Yeah.
then maybe have some fun shit at the end for people who actually like want to play that sort of a campaign.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There was a lot of stuff.
Clear. Sorry, go ahead.
There was a lot of stuff in the playtest about that, and about 40% of all games end before level 7, due to players dropping out, people moving, the game stalling, and then there's the ones that make it to level 14, and then there's not anything good to play. The biggest difference between 5 and first and second, is that there is not the plethora of adventures in 5th edition still that we had in 2nd edition. 2nd edition, we had Dragon Magazine adventures. We had the adventures that came in the box sets for each, like, Dragon.
Oh my God, Tomb of Annihilation. Whew.
There are a load of modules. It's just most of them are made independently and kind of suck.
Right. I have found quite a few of those that are really bad, but there's a big gap, because I was looking at my friends. There's a big gap of strict adventures that don't start you at first, that Wizards has put out. Almost all of their adventures start at first. Let's say Descent into Avernus is a prime example. It's broken up into 3 sections inside the book, but there's no way to drop a party into section 2 or section 3 at the level they're supposed to be, and them have any idea what they're doing. Right? There's no good buy-in for the characters to get in. Right? If you got a bunch of people who are like, well, we're 13th level, we can start doing this. I'd love to put you in the last half of Curse of Avernus, but I can't, because there's no way to seed you into that game. You would have to start over. If we want to play Curse of Avernus, you've got to start at first level and work your way through it. Otherwise, your characters have no idea what's going on in the story. And I think that... I'm sorry. And I think that that's one thing that we had more of back in first and second, is we had adventures that started at 6th level. They took you from 6 to 10. They took you from 8 to 12. They had those little, 3, 4, 5 level increments, and there was something at every level. You could find one, like I have a box of Dragon magazines. I can literally go from 1st to 20th level and not repeat stories, and you would literally we'd probably play for 3 years. I'd never repeat an adventure at every given level.
I'd have to say that as far as how campaigns last, like, the only reason that I've only had one 5th edition campaign go to 20th level is because we haven't gotten there in our campaign yet. Typically, what I've found is that it's not so much the campaign itself that causes groups to fall apart. It's definitely how the DM's referee player interaction.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, loads of people deal with having to end campaigns early for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
DM burnout is a big one.
Player burnout. Sometimes players are just a part of a bunch of different games. They're like, I can't play all these games. Sorry, I gotta get out of this one. Sometimes it's just the fact that, like, people move
and they can't play together anymore. It's like, well, you're all IRL gaming and I'm on a computer. This is really awkward, and I don't feel right doing this. I don't really want to play this game anymore. There's a lot of different things that fall into it. I wanted to make one more note on the topic itself of homebrew classes. Something to bear in mind is that a lot of homebrew classes that people want to play is mostly based off of the fact off of pre-existing media that they want to import into 5e.
Yes.
Right. So there's like a Final Fantasy character that they really, really like, and they found a homebrew class specifically made to make that character. And they're like, I want to play this class so I can be this character. That is the one scenario where I'm cautious, because I don't necessarily mind if you want to bring in pre-existing media into a homebrewed world of mine, because most of my worlds are made up off the top of my head anyway.
Right.
So I can make it work lore-wise, but if all you're doing is playing a character that already exists, it's the Drizzt problem, Yeah. If all you're doing is playing a character that already exists, that's not going to be interesting for you. It's not going to be interesting for the other players, and I am not going to be interested in engaging that character because I already know that character. I know everything I need to know about that character, and chances are good, because we're starting at low levels, that character has no fucking business doing whatever the hell you're doing.
Yeah.
That character, as far as that media is concerned, has already killed gods. Why are they here?
Yeah.
Why are they level 1? There's no reason for this.
Yeah.
So I get a little bit more cautious. Now, if they want to create their own character based on that character, because they just really like the aesthetic and they really like what they were able to do, but they have their own individual personality, at that point I might work with them. So I'd have to talk to them about the character they want to make first before I would allow something like that.
The Nat 30s has followed.
Yeah, apparently they got unfollowed for some reason. As an example, Witcher. Loads of people love Witcher. There's a bajillion Witcher classes and subclasses that are all homebrewed, and some of them are actually all right. I've seen a couple of them that actually are perfectly balanced and work just fine. In fact, Matt Mercer's fucking Bloodhunter class is heavily based on Witchers.
Yeah.
And that's essentially canon at this point. So, I don't mind if somebody wants to play a Witcher. Now, if they want to play Geralt, I'm going to have an issue.
Yeah. You want to play if you want to play a Witcher, that's fine. If you want to play the Witcher, there's a big issue. So, I'm going to put this out there to those of you who are watching. Does anybody have a question for us? Please go ahead and type it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as you can. I know Dio is watching and is just waiting for us to ask Dio what she wants. I know what Dio wants. Dio wants a cookie, but you can't have my cookie, Dio. This is my cookie. Chocolate chip, homemade. My wife made me cookies because the kids aren't here till tomorrow. So I get my own batch of chocolate chip cookies.
Nice.
Greedy.
Oh, absolutely. Hi, Dio. How you doing? You got a question you want to ask us? Any of us specifically, or just as a group? While Dio's getting ready for hers, we'll start with Iz. Iz, what is your biggest hurdle to game prep?
I think it might be that I'm a over preparer, just in life. Everything about my life is over planned and overdone. So I will plan all the things, and then I'll only end up doing about 10% of it because I forget the other 90%. And then I have to backtrack later because I just have planned too much. I'd say the other thing that has me a little bit struggling is encounters, combat encounters specifically, because like I mentioned, I'm doing Tyranny of Dragons, and it was developed before the rules came out, and then they had to do all this errata and all of that, and so what has been helpful is when I do stream before it was on Thursdays, now on Mondays, and kind of asked whoever's watching to kind of help me out, because I feel like that results in better combat encounters when people who know what they're doing can let me know if the thing I'm about to throw at them is either too weak or too strong, because I just get nervous. Our play version of play is like very role play, like heavy, and they, as I've mentioned, every time I've come on here, they really love their characters. All of my players are brand new. And
Yeah.
they put a lot of time into building their very first characters, and they really want them to like find all of the
Succeed.
things that are out there. Yeah. And so I'm trying to challenge them without like murdering them outright. I mean, I'm not, as I said, we're not at a point anymore where I'm like fudging rolls, because again, they were all brand new and put a lot of time into the characters. I wasn't going to kill them at level 1. But I'm also trying not to, destroy them needlessly. So that's my biggest challenge, is the over prep, and then not being quite fully knowing
Well versed.
monsters. Yeah.
Well versed in how many of these can I put on the map before they go, holy crap. Sometimes it's good, or we'll come back to that, because sometimes it is good to make your characters fight for their lives, your players to fight for their lives, and make the decision.
I've done that a lot.
And make their decision to run. Lundy, what do you think? What's your biggest downside to prep?
Distractions. I get ADHD like a mother every time I sit down to do prep work. I can prep no problem. I've got a whole ass story going on in my head, and I can be like, I know exactly the pace of my players, and I know what they can get through in 4 hours. I know I can do all that. But then I sit down and I start to do stuff, and then I'm like, YouTube. Ooh.
Yeah.
I start watching YouTube videos. I start listening to music. Like I get this idea of like, oh, this needs a good background music. So I go to YouTube and I try to find some good music, and then I just start meandering from there.
Oh, look, grapes!
Me on a messenger program, and I just start getting into a conversation with them. And then like I look at my desktop and I'm like, I haven't played that game in a while, and I go ahead and boot that up for 2 hours, and I'm like, damn it. I was supposed to be working on my.
Yeah. What about you, Ack?
I'd have to say, probably. It's not quite narrative structure. It's avoiding railroading, because railroading is not fun. Having to constantly be aware of whether or not I'm cutscening my players or railroading.
Yeah.
Is probably those. I wouldn't say that's my biggest problem, but it is definitely my biggest concern.
Right. Yeah, mine is the same as Lundy's. I have the attention span of a small rock. I will start to look into something, and then my problem is my brain wants to know everything about it. So when I start to look up how to move this how to name this token differently, I now am in 2 hours deep into how to make a token by scratch on I get into the whole thing of it and just lose myself in that rabbit hole. I tend to rabbit hole really fast because my disability causes me to hyper focus a lot. So when I sit down to do something, if I don't get distracted, I can do it for hours. But all it takes is that one little, was that a bird? And then it's, I'm an accidental ornithologist for the next 4 hours because I'm looking up what color.
3 hours after you get done, after you sit down to start doing your prep work, you're on Wikipedia going, Danny DeVito was in that many movies?
Yeah, yeah. So we'll start with Lundy. Dio asks, what do you guys do when a player starts to either metagame completely or when they completely change? Well, there's 2 questions. So we'll start with that. What do you guys do when a player starts to metagame? Like, really bad?
For the most part, I just generally don't have to deal with it all that much. Mostly because my players are pretty good at like just like we talked about this a couple weeks ago when I was on. Is that my players have this problem where they are so anti-metagame that they have a problem just progressing because they're worried that if they progress, they're metagaming.
Yeah.
So I don't really have that much of an issue these days anyway. When I used to have the problem, all I would essentially, like, it depended on what the nature of the metagaming was. If somebody just, like, because I played with so many people who had already been playing D&D for so long, they knew just as much about the game as I did. So if I put in a monster or a creature in their path and I described it, they would already know what the monster is. They would already know what its AC is. They would already know what its hit points were. They would already know what its weaknesses were. They would already know everything about it in their heads, and so they would accommodate their play style to go with it. And honestly, if that's something that happens, that's on me, in my opinion, for not switching things up enough to keep them guessing as to what's going on. If I throw a mummy at somebody and my entire group is like, all right, mummies have the ability to punch somebody, and when they punch somebody, you have to make a DC check versus a supernatural curse. And if you don't do that supernatural curse, you're going to need to get a greater restoration, otherwise you're going to be in big trouble. If they already know all that stuff in their heads, they can't just not know that stuff. So I can't really just like blame them for acting accordingly. So I don't really mind that sort of metagaming too much. And sometimes you play with players for so long, like you play with the same player for like 6 years, and they just get to the point where they already know what your story is by the end of the first bit of it, and they're like, "Yep, I already know what you're going for here," and that can be bad if they decide to try and circumvent a lot of the complications that you have planned along the way, by just being like, I figured it out. This person is going to end up being the big evil guy, and we're just going to go ahead and fight him right now. Actually, because even though they don't have a necessary reason for it, at that point I'll be like, cool. Well, you're level 3 and they're level 20, and they also have like epic boots and shit.
Yeah.
So, it's not going to go well for you. They're going to go ahead and raffle stomp you, and then they're going to leave.
Oh, he turns into a dragon. What? I didn't know he could.
I don't need you trying to step on my narrative saying I've already got it figured out.
Yeah.
But, in those cases, that's them just like trying to play the game on like a meta sense.
Yeah.
And I don't really go with that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to metagaming in the sense of, I already know all the beasties in the bestiary, and you're using one of them, and I have all the knowledge of that. I can't just unknow that. When they do that, I don't mind. It's whatever. Any one character could have potentially picked up this information anywhere along the way in some manner or another. So, like, whatever. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah. So I'll ask the same question for you but I know that your players aren't quite as experienced to metagame, as it were. For metagaming, for me, it's always been, I'm a very big proponent of not metagaming. What I know and what my character knows are two different things, and I purposefully don't do anything that my character doesn't know. I like when he said, almost to the point of not, over unmetagaming. But there are things that every character will ever know. Everyone, everywhere, knows that trolls are averse to fire. They don't know about acid, but everybody knows, you see a troll, burn it. Like, they even put it in the new Forgotten Realms book that they released, that everyone in Faerun, from a child, is taught trolls burn with fire. to get away from that, well, I'm going to burn it. Well, how do you know trolls burn? Come on, man, everybody knows a troll burns, right? Like, that's just common knowledge at this point. It's something that's been in D&D for 40 years. Everybody who's even heard of it, even people who don't play D&D, know that you burn a troll, right? You burn a troll and you burn a hydra. Like, we can all agree that that's in our mythology for so long. So if you had a character that did that, like somebody okay, so let's make it a little more personal. Let's say your husband, who plays with you, knows what's coming up in the next session. right? He gets a look at your notes, or he's on the computer and sees you doing this, or gets bored or whatever, and then you see him kind of edging around some corners that might have some bad guys on them. That you know there's a trap there, and he's like, "I'm going to look for a trap," and his character never looks for traps. How would you deal with that? Not that your husband would do something shady like that. Just as it's. Or he might. He's a guy. he might. He's a guy. We do that kind of thing.
I probably I'd probably call it out, honestly, and just say like, there's no reason why your character would do that. So, like, what's the reason that you're suddenly a rogue when you're, a paladin warlock in this moment? That's why too, like when I'm playing with them, typically. The only really kind of like quote unquote metagaming that I see with my players is that they'll be like, somebody will ask me a question like, are there traps in this room? And it's the sorcerer who asks. And I'm like, well, roll a perception check. And they're like, well, maybe the rogue does it or the ranger does it, because they have higher investigation. I like to have as much as I can, although it would make sense, obviously, in a certain scenario. I'm like, well, clearly the ranger who always checks for traps would be the one who's checking for traps, because they don't have a rogue in their group. But I do like to have the person who asks the question be the one who does the check, depending on the situation. Where, there have been so many, especially if you've watched, like there's so many times where the player is like, is this thing over here? I'm like, well, is Erdnot, that's my husband's character, like, is he looking? Well, I guess he would be, because I'm, okay, so make a perception check. Oh man, but Vidania has higher perceptions. Like, well, but your character's looking. So you make the roll, not them. You're asking the question. My friend Lauren, her tiefling, does that all the time. She just thinks outside the box, and her character does the same. And so she'll make perception checks all the time, but she's got like a -1 in perception or something.
Yeah.
So she's like, damn, why can't someone else do it? It's like, well, because you're the one who thought of it. You're the one whose character is standing there looking in that direction. So you make the check, not the person who has a +4. But for the most part, they don't like intentionally metagame. They actually, like we stopped our last session as the Etten, I'm probably saying that too, like Etten, and the troll were fighting behind them, and they were like, so do we know enough about this to, and I'm like, don't look anything up, because they have a whole strategy Discord, and they're all brand new players, and I'm like, don't go searching about what this might be and how to kill it and all of that other stuff. I'll tell you what you know, and we'll go from there, because we've got like 4 days until we actually do the fight.
Right.
But they asked, because they're trying to like have fun. So yeah, my husband knows better than to check my notes.
It's like, I'm checking for traps. That's awesome. It's above you. It falls on your head. You're dead.
Right.
What?
Yeah, I wouldn't even, like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, or I would make him do the roll. He can do it. And his investigation is not that great, and he's also not going to get any kind of advantage or anything. So
DC's a 25. right? You have a chance.
And that's true for if you're not skilled and you're somebody who's just kind of like, if I was me checking for traps in a dungeon, then I would assume my DC would be probably a 25, where somebody who's skilled at it is a 10.
Somebody suspicious like me, I'd find it on a 10, because I've been in those where you have
trap checking training in real life.
What about you, Ak? The meta game question. Do you run into it?
I don't think. Well, first of all, I've run into it a couple of times. Typically, first off, not enough creatures have specific weaknesses for me to, unless it's got legendary actions. I don't give a shit if my players look it up in the bestiary. Mostly because being able to most of those entries have pictures, and being able for them, allowing them to visualize is a big part. And also, I can change stat blocks whenever the hell I want, so they can look them up. I don't give a fuck. Legendary actions. As far as metagaming's concerned, I've always got the Tarask in my back pocket. Trust me, bitch.
Yeah.
But with stuff like predicting predicting the narrative, that's why I try to keep it so loose. Is that I can change the narrative if players start behaving against their character. Like with trap placement and stuff like that. My stuff is I typically try not to keep my things so rigid that like I can't just move the trap or put it somewhere where they're not expecting it.
Yeah.
Which is typically how I like to handle that situation. So it's like if the dopey barbarian character who wanders into every situation with
Half drunk.
swagger and confidence, swagger and confidence, all of a sudden, because of the layout of a map, thinks that, and with no like military experience, thinks that oh my gosh, they're gonna get, or no, I ask people to make a perception roll, or when I ask, what's your there's a couple of trigger phrases, like when I ask what's everybody's passive perception, and then somebody's like, I want to make a perception roll. I'm like, well, you fucking can't, because I asked what your passive was.
Yeah, because you're in charge. That's the I think that's a lot of the go-to.
And it'd be like, and then the character learns from it. They failed their perception. Their passive perception wasn't high enough. The party gets ambushed by 12 gnolls. They get their asses handed to them, and they got to run away. Next time they enter a clearing, they all said, "I make a perception roll." So I mean, it's all its own beast. I feel like if I'm running into a person that is really badly metagaming, like
It's hard to do now, though. I think.
Oh, it's super hard, especially with how fluid the rules are.
Yeah.
But like, say like there's like I typically allow. I don't have a problem if a character has like working knowledge of humanoids, beasts, and monsters. That's fine. Aberrations, however, little tricky. Aberrations are friggin' weird. You can't typically like discern anatomy from it.
Yeah.
And so when they start attacking specific weaknesses, I'll just get rid of those weaknesses. I don't give a shit. Like if you don't want to figure this stuff out on your own, I've got no problem making the bad guy harder.
Right, but how do you make it so that they figure it out on their own when they already know it?
Right. Well, then I guess they shouldn't have cheated.
It's not cheating though. They already know aberrations because they've been playing D&D since forever.
Yeah.
See, the thing is that there's right. Can you tell me what elemental weaknesses do mind flayers have? Can you tell me off the top of your head? Nope, it's Sonic.
Oh, right.
That's not an elemental.
I lied. Yeah. It's lightning. Jesus Christ! Like you don't know. Players don't know, and that's my point. Is that you can give it whatever arbitrary weaknesses or vulnerabilities you've got. Yeah, you had it right. But I told you, Sonic.
So if I lightning bolted an Illithid, and then you were just like, it does normal damage. Like
I wouldn't even tell you. I wouldn't even tell you if it did normal damage.
Well, I might be.
You can go ahead
if I already kind of know what the HP of an Illithid is.
But like with what Mark did today,
the HP of an Illithid is like 134 or something along those lines. Then.
Yeah, I never tell you.
Do the math and be like, you either increased his HP or you took away his lightning vulnerability.
Right. But like, if your character were to say that, then I'd be like, yo, dude, you're metagaming. You need to dial it back. right? But if as a player you're like, you sneaky motherfucker, I'd be like, hell yeah, man, you didn't even see this shit coming. Get out of
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, there's so how do here's another question.
The fuck up.
Some drama going on. Go ahead, Lupo.
So here's another thing. How often do you take a base monster and change it so that the stats are close but not the same? How often do you make your own monsters?
Oh, I do so on a fairly regular basis, honestly. Usually because I like to make it a plot point that monsters aren't normally how they are in any one particular game. I did it recently with a Null in my Thursday campaign. This was a couple weeks ago, but essentially I ramped up a Null CR to CR3 by giving it a bunch of new stuff and extra HP and higher AC and shit like that. To make it an interesting encounter for one, but also for two, I put that into the narrative as well. And I'm just like, this is a Null, but it's way different from any Null you've ever heard of. So, it was interesting to put that as a part of the narrative. And I do that on a regular basis when it comes to any sort of basic creature that everybody knows, because it keeps the players on their toes a bit. They see a goblin, they're like, I know I can kill a goblin basically in one hit. This is not going to be a problem. And then just but this is a souped up goblin though. And they hit the goblin, they do 14 damage, and I'm like, so the goblin takes the hit on the shoulder, just looks at you and gets pissed off and just starts screeching in your face. And now you're taking 2d6 sonic damage. What? They can do that? This one can.
Yeah. What about you, Izzy? Have you tried to do that yet?
So I do use a lot of other people's homebrewed monsters, fairly frequently. And I there's some Patreons that I use, and then I'll also just kind of read about other people's stuff, like what you were mentioning with a different type of Null or different types of goblins. I've already kind of done all of that just to spice it up a little bit for them. I don't want them to get too familiar with just I'll throw in the basic thing and then I'll add on to it.
Right.
Especially with goblins, there's going to be 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever of them. So maybe 2 of them are normal, and then all the other ones are random ones that I found that got thumbs up from other people before I just throw it in there. So there's at least 1, 2, 3. There's at least 3, if not 4, bad guys that are kind of mini bosses, I guess, specifically for each of my characters that I am trying to build those battles when they get to them. But none of them, maybe one of them, none of them though that I can think of are monsters. They're all humanoid people,
Right.
elves or something. And so I'm just building them to fight them later, much later, when they're much higher level and I'm a little bit more experienced, maybe sometime next year. So those are works in progress, a lot of them, because I'm still learning.
Right.
But I have no problem with it. I love using other people's homebrewed monsters all the time, just to add stuff in.
I actually have a propensity to make my own monsters. Specifically, I think the last one I did was I made 6 different types of alternative zombie types, because my characters were going to be in Ravenloft. They were going to wash up on a beach, so I made beach zombies. Zombies that come out of the water, zombies that were laying on, so they had one of them had kelp, and they could do a web kind of attack where they would grapple you if they were 10 feet of you, and you'd be wrapped up in this kelp. and another one had a big shark mouth on it, and just those kind of things, because your players want to be surprised. They always want to be like, oh my god, dude, I cannot believe that where did you find it? And they ask you, where'd you get those? Whenever your players are like, oh, that monster was crazy, then you go, I made that. You get that little attaboy, pat yourself on the back a little bit, like, that's all me. When you change them up so much that they don't even resemble, like Lenny said, you make one that's bigger, you can jack up the stats, give them other stuff, but when you take one and you just transform it, you're like, oh, well, this zombie used to be a paladin, so he can do cause wounds.
As soon as you start like getting a little bit of ego from the creatures you make, though, sometimes that can backfire real hard.
Yeah, it does.
Like, you make a creature and your characters just blow through it way easier than you thought they would, and then they're just like, that was easy as hell, and you're just like, you son of a bitch.
I spent 3 days
like very secretly add like an extra 300 HP. And then an extra like 5 to their AC, and you're just like, fucking try it now, bitch.
Actually, my biggest problem is I actually make my monsters a little too tough. I overestimate. Well, back to my preparation. I overestimate the ability of my players a lot. I have a real tendency to overestimate how smart the players will be at any given moment. So I'll be like, yeah, these guys, they can handle, like the Sunday group, you guys can handle this. Well, for an example, Sunday night they rolled up on this body, and there's a swarm of rats and a swarm of ravens that are chewing on the horse body, and they were like, oh, well, we're just going to scare them away, and they ran off. And then they walk past. Then Lundy's character walked past the body, and a bunch of rock grubs come bursting out of the stomach. And he's like, "Oh, so they're there too, huh? Okay." And then the rats came back. The ravens didn't, but the rats came back, and they're like,
now, luckily, we didn't have that much of a problem with them.
Yeah, but it did freak him out a little bit.
My favorite tactic, and I'm not even. It's Jesus balls. I'll take super obscure monsters from 3.5 and adapt them.
Oh yeah, that's always a good monsters that
so much fun.
Monsters that don't exist anymore. Those are like I have a ton of second edition monsters that I pull out all the time, and some of my players have been playing long enough. They're like, "Is that what I think it is? Maybe."
Yeah.
Like, when was the last time one of your party members ran into, like, a boule? Like, just cuz. Like, just as a random encounter.
A boulet?
Yeah.
I fucking love boulets, dude. They're great.
Land sharks. Land sharks.
Yeah, land sharks.
Yeah.
They're land
really
sharks.
tough.
Yeah.
For one thing.
So tough.
Yeah, and they come in, it's 1d3 plus 1 out of the original monster manual, I think. It's like, because they hunt in packs. It's like, how many hit points has it got? 64. What's its armor class? -5. What? Okay.
So what I typically do is anything that it's got damage reduction again, or anything that it's got damage reduction except against, it has vulnerability.
Yeah.
If it's got resistance, it's got resistance. If it's got immunity, it's got immunity, and it typically keeps the same hit point numbers and the AC.
Yeah.
I'll usually take about 10 points off of like the skill checks that it gets stuff with, mostly because of the way skill points worked in 3.5 was really was totally busted.
Yeah.
And then with like the special abilities and stuff, if it's an ability that grants like a bonus to hit, it usually just gives it advantage on that attack or whatever. And most of the spells they transferred over into 5e. So any of the like any of the spell or spell-like abilities that these other monsters would have, they typically exist already, or you can find something comparable.
So, are you watching the stream, Nat? Izzy?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna put up the picture of a boule for you.
Oh my gosh, is it not in 5e?
Oh, it's in 5e.
That's a 5e.
Oh, I was about to say. Oh my gosh,
But that is a great picture.
No.
But that is a great picture.
So I think your cam's over it.
Is
Most
it?
of it.
Just slightly, yeah. You're covering its face.
Sorry, I have
Other
to
way.
move. I have to move OBS out of the way.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a land shark.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
They're vicious, evil creatures that no one ever wants to run in. You say boule, and everybody goes, "Holy crap, I'm running!"
Or like the Fiend Folio, pulling monsters out of the Fiend
The
Folio.
worst bit about them is definitely their burrow speed.
Yes.
The fact that they can just go underground. Like, they'll attack you and then go underground, and you're like, all right.
This is gonna get this conversation about to get real nostalgic. All right, we gotta like either move.
Yeah. Well, the Fiend Folio. If you want, as a hint to all DMs, if you want good monsters, go find the second edition Fiend Folio, the Monster Manual 2, those kinds of things. Some of those old ones. You can probably get them on eBay, your local gaming store. Shout out to local gaming stores all over the planet. You can probably find a couple of those. Just update them to 5.0. It's not hard.
Shout out to 3.5 Elder Evils. That's probably one of the best big
Yeah.
bad evil guy generator books ever.
Yeah. Those are the kind of things. So we're going to go on to another question. How do you... we'll start with Actherion. How do you deal with the stress of DMing? Like the total stress of you having to plan, you have to play, and you have to stream, and you have to... all that kind. How do you deal with it?
By reading. I read a lot. Read, listen to music, draw, find something that helps you center yourself and gives you inspiration. Sometimes watching television can help. It's different for everybody. I have found that I wasn't inspired to run a D&D campaign until I was a part of one as a player. So I mean, it's kind of different for everybody. My advice to anybody that's stuck in a rut is this is going to be ridiculous. Pause where you're at, designing your current campaign. Write the trashiest, most ridiculous plot you can think of, and then run that as a one shot. I'm serious. Like base it off an episode of Supernatural you saw 3 years. It doesn't matter. Your players are gonna have fun. It's gonna be a breath of fresh air. You're gonna have a great time running it, and you're gonna be like, hey, you're gonna. It's basically a reset. So that's typically how I handle it. Like so before I was in Mark's campaign and after I was out of Yasta, I was running little one-shot adventures based off of a mechanic that I'd seen online where it was Witcher-style monsters by Zebashu. And it was basically, you just made super niche monsters that were stronger than normal, had more resistances but specific weaknesses, and you had to study and hunt down the monster, figure out what its bait was. I mean, it was brilliantly designed. It was so. It's not so much that the mechanic itself was super in-depth design, but it was such like a. It was such a different concept to what I was used to designing as a DM that coming up with those ideas was fun. And then when I started playing Orden and got into that whole thing, started being a player in one of Mark's campaigns, I was just like, I gotta get in on this. This is awesome. And so I was like, what would be bitching? Oh man, like a pirate adventure where, like I'm writing up the design document for this whole bounty mechanic where like the more trouble the players get into, the more people are after them, and it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be great.
What about you, Lundy? What's your go-to?
Just like X said, there's like a bunch of different ways for a lot of different people. For me, I only ever really actually even get stressed out when I know I did a bad session.
Yeah.
And I'm very good at judging when I did a bad session because I can tell from a variety of factors. Number one, when my players aren't engaged, which isn't necessarily my fault, but usually more than often than not is. Or when I'm going over a scene and I don't remember any of the details and I'm constantly stuttering, like, and as soon as that starts going on in my head, I'm just like, I am fucking this up really badly. as soon as the group tries to roleplay with an NPC and I immediately forget like their name, or like their motivate, or even who the NPC is for any one particular reason, because I didn't note that down, or when they decide to talk to an NPC that I wasn't even prepared for because they're like, well, I want to talk to the librarian. I'm like, I didn't make a fucking librarian. and then I try my best to RP a librarian, and then they're like, what's this librarian's name? And I'm just like, fucking Dinglegok McNugget. I don't know. Just when all of these things start to coalesce together, I'm like, I had a really bad session. I was not prepared as much as I should have been for this session, and it ended up making a very bad experience for me. And when I have a bad experience, I know that reflects on the players as well. So that's the only time I ever actually get stressed out, when I know I had a bad session. And when that happens, essentially, all I do is just get off of anything D&D related, period, and either binge watch an anime show, which, you can see that may or may not be the best thing to do, or play a game where I'm going to kill a lot of stuff. That usually helps me out a lot. Those are the two ways in which I can normally get around, like, okay, I had a bad session, but next time's going to be fine. Mostly because, and here's one of the main reasons why it helps me. It's not just about venting. It's also about the fact that if I'm watching a show or if I'm playing a game, I get ideas for cool scenes, visuals. And that's the thing. If I look at a visual and in my head, I'm able to describe that visual to myself in good detail, that helps me get back on track with being able to be on the ball in describing anything. And that's key as far as like painting a picture for your players. And that's one of the main things to be able, when you're able to paint a picture, you're doing good DMing. So it helps me with that. Whether it's in combat or whether it's just looking at a scene, be able to just be a player rolls a nat 20 and they do like 28 damage on a creature that has maybe like 5 HP left, and you're like, all right, well, I'll tell you what, you take that great axe, you bring it above your head, you bring out a guttural roar that from your past, and you bring that great axe down on top of it, and sinew just starts slicing immediately, and immediately the whole body starts to split as if a sandwich being taken apart, and you just split that down the middle, and his shoulder to his side is immediately just separated from each other. The spine is completely separated, and it just goes in all sorts of different directions. And like, once you're able to start doing that makes people a lot happier about whatever kill they just had, rather than just like, all right, and that one is dead.
Yeah.
What I mean?
What? It's dead. What about you, Izzy? I know you haven't been playing a long time, or haven't been DMing in a long time. What's your go-to de-stressor? If you start to overthink the campaign a little bit and start to get a, feel the weight of the thumb coming down on you, the scale.
Well, so I'm gonna make this my last question because I gotta get up early. But
Okay.
I don't know. I kind of live off of chaos and stress as much as I am a person who has to have plan A through Z already like in my head about everything in life. I work a pretty intense job. Well, it's a career that I am growing and fostering. I have two very small children that are insane people who require a lot of my time while I am working. I run the entire stream and everything that has to do with the stream. I do all of the DM prep and all of the marketing and everything for this endeavor. I don't know if this is just like how my brain copes with life, but I don't have time to like slow down. So that's probably just how I deal with the stress, is that like if I'm too stressed out about trying to figure out what I'm going to do with the game, I'll just switch over to my work stress instead and focus on that for a little while. Or if like the emails are coming at me and I really want to scream into someone's face that I actually haven't seen in a good 4 months, I might switch over to the kids' stress instead, or go to, the dungeon master stress. It's just how my life is. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily the way everyone else operates. When I have time to slow down, I usually just either play some kind of video game, or I used to have time to get like really sucked into different Netflix shows. But one thing that I will do, and I haven't yet done, is I will rewatch all of Arrested Development from the beginning every year, and that also will help me every once in a while. But I haven't had time this year yet. The 2-year-old has been walking now for 6 months or so, and he's crazy, and the 4-year-old is also completely insane. So this has taken up all of my evenings. They're just now sleeping through the night, which is like brand spanking new. So I'm getting to sleep about 6 hours at a time instead of 3. So yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm the best person to know exactly how to calm down or slow down. I just move to the next thing for a little while.
I always feel bad when newer parents say, I can't, my kids don't sleep through my kids don't sleep through the night. As a Staley, our family sleeps like the dead. Like it's my favorite story is my dad fell asleep in a recliner chair when I was probably like 10 years old, next to the wall by the sliding glass door. And our neighbor, who was an electrician, our next door neighbor, came over, was supposed to help him put in an air conditioner in the wall. He cut a hole in the wall above where my dad was sleeping, installed an air conditioner, and then went home. 3 hours later, Dad wakes up, goes next door, and goes, "Hey Jerry, you're going to come over and help us and going to help me put in the air conditioner?" He goes, "Richard, I did it like 3 hours ago." Like that's how we sleep. Like if you don't literally come up and go, the rule in our house is don't ask Dad questions while he's asleep. If Dad's not standing up and looking you in the eye, the answer is always no.
No,
So.
I wish. Sometimes. It's been a long time since I slept.
All right. Well, Izzy, go ahead and give your plug since you got to go ahead and get out of here, and then we will take a short break, and we will be right back after that.
Yeah, so you can catch us on the Nat 30s on Tuesdays and Saturdays. For some reason, I can't remember that, even though I run the game. 9 p.m. Eastern time, and Mondays I do some DM prep, and I'm always looking for help and suggestions. The group helped me with this latest encounter that we're going to be running on Saturday. So yeah, you can check us out on Insta and, well, not really so much Facebook, but Instagram, and all of our video on demand is on YouTube as well.
All right. Well, thank you, Izzy. Thank you for joining us as much as you can. Go take
Thank
care
you.
of the minions and get some sleep. Have a great day. That's it, everyone. We are going to take a short commercial break, our union mandated break, and then we will be right back. Hello, everyone. We are back, and like I said, we're back from break. Isbeth from the Nat 30s had to go and take care of herself and her little minions and get some nice rest. So, in her place, we have Nat Awesome. We have a lot of Nats. So, Nat, go ahead, introduce yourself, and plug all of your stuff.
Okay, so I'm Ash, the DM of Nat Awesome. We stream live our session on Sunday, The Rise of the Vampire King, at 5:30 Pacific Daylight Time, and then I also do a map building segment on Fridays at 4:30, and a DM compendium on Wednesdays at 4:30 as well.
Awesome. And they can find you on Twitter or...
Yes, Twitter. We do have a Facebook. We have a YouTube. All the links for that is the easiest spot to find them is on our Twitch. We have everything linked there. So just check out the About Us, and should have all the information for you.
Awesome. So we are going to start with a question from, I hate these. Dreaded GM wanted to know, what do you think your greatest quality as a GM is? So some self-reflection. We're going to start with you, Nat, because you're fresh on the scene here.
I don't know if it has anything to do with it, but I'm a Virgo, so I'm very detail-oriented. I love lists and gathering as much detailed information and kind of knowing everything before I start sessions. So probably one of my best qualities.
All right, Lundy. I know what yours is. It's the mustache.
You think it's the mustache. It's actually a full beard.
Oh.
In fact, sometimes I go with the goatee situation, and that definitely helps. But my main thing is improvisation. I'm very good at it. It's something that I took classes for. It's something that I'm capable of working off of. I'm able to carry a conversation fairly well and naturally, as well as through role play. I'm able to put myself into different people's shoes fairly easily, and I'm pretty good at making sure that I can continue a flow of conversation between characters very well. PCs and NPCs, NPCs and PCs, or NPCs and NPCs, whatever it is. I'm able to keep it going very well. And if I see that my players are having an issue, like getting some details that they're trying to get out of somebody because they don't really know how to word it or anything along those lines, then I'm able to help them out. Yes, and is a very useful tool to be able to master. And once you do, it makes role-playing just in general so much easier. And being able to role-play smoothly with your players makes them feel very immersed, more so than any sort of description that you can give for anything in particular. If they love a character that you made, then that's going to stick with them way more than like a vivid description that you gave of a particular place. Characters make, in my opinion, a game.
Can you do me a favor, Lundy?
Yes.
Can you say Pinot Noir?
Yeah. Pinot Noir.
Only because he improvised a really bad date night last night between two characters, and it was brutal. It was
great.
It was great.
The reason the situation was so phenomenal is because Mark, he has experience as a restaurant manager. So being a part of a restaurant and knowing how to serve people in a general sense is something that he's very like in his element in. So he was able to play that part very well. So I knew how to be an absolutely clueless restaurateur. So all I had to do was just be that clueless person as he's trying to play a very high-class establishment that's attempting to sell me wines and entrees and appetizers and such.
Would you like to inspect the bottle?
Why? Does it have a crack? He's trying to like detail it out because he knows how restaurants work. As soon as the waitress leaves, so a basket of bread appears on the table, and I'm like, I didn't order any bread, but I guess it's complimentary, so whatever. This is going to ruin my appetite. Ow.
Yeah. So yes, improvisation. I have to agree with Lundy. I think that my best quality is, and I say this with all due respect, my disability makes me a really good DM. I am anxious. I am paranoid. I do have all the, I'm for those of you just tuning in, I am bipolar. I take my meds. I've had my treatments and all that stuff. But the ability to think on your feet and just go with what your players are doing at the moment and still get them to where the plot needs to go is so important as a DM. Because you can make unfortunately, Nat, you can make all the lists that you want. Your players are going to find a way to go around that list a lot.
Yeah, I've definitely encountered that for sure. But it's like, I have to do it. It's like my own little ism of like, I need to do it this way so that I can actually have like a clean storyline. But like, I've learned how to like chop things out and make other things connect just because it needs to.
Yeah,
And that's like Izzy played as a guest character in my campaign 2 weeks ago, and I literally dropped her in and took an NPC out that was going to serve this role for the party and embedded her character into the story.
Oh, see, that's awesome. What about you, Ak? Are you with us now?
Give me about 15 seconds.
All right.
He's off doing store
And there we are. Sorry, I was less than 15 seconds. My bad.
Yeah. So which
I'd say that my biggest
Boon as a DM.
is puzzle design.
that's a good one. That's actually a very difficult skill.
Yeah, that's something that I struggle with. I tend to avoid puzzles for the most part in my dungeons. I'll have like maybe one at the end that's like necessary to get through, but I can't do that regularly. It's something that I'm just not that experienced in. I try. I get clues online. I look at other examples of puzzles, and I'm just like, I can't come up with one that's just me. I can't do it. I
always run into the problem where I think it's something that I've run into. Like I mimic puzzles I've seen before in games that I've played.
Yeah.
Actually, I have my first like dungeon where I'm trying puzzles and stuff, and I kind of based it around Indiana Jones, like the first one, and so I mean, those weren't so much as puzzles as traps, but it's like a happy marriage between the two. So I'm excited to see how my players handle it because we don't have a rogue. So
oh boy.
Yeah.
That's not as bad as not having a cleric.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is going to be pretty interesting to see, how if they learn from their experience at all. We also have a warlock who is very unlucky when it comes to locked doors. He seems to always find them, and I'm like, I guess you need a multi-class and learn how to pick locks,
As an example of my inability to do puzzle design, my second session with my Thursday crew, I decided to set up a murder mystery, and I thought that might be fun for them to do. That did not go well, and one of the reasons it didn't go well, I'll take the blame for it, but they went off on a complete and total red herring that completely derailed their ability to investigate in any way whatsoever, effectively. The basic idea was somebody's been kidnapping people in the town, and only one of the people who's been kidnapped is somebody who actually lives in the town. So they went and they investigated the house of the person who lives in the town. Everybody else has been kidnapped have been travelers for the most part. So they go and they investigate the place of the guy who was kidnapped in town. They find that he has a small list taped underneath his main desk in his home that has a list of names on it, and one of them is crossed off. And they find out that person's name, who has been crossed off, is in jail. Why is she in jail? Well, because she was traveling through town because she laundered some jewels or whatnot and made a bunch of money. So they're like, so this is the list of people who are going to be kidnapped. And I'm like, why do you think that? Because that is not what I was trying to get. as far as this is concerned. I was not planning on you going in that direction.
Because-
none of those people have been kidnapped.
Because your players will always assume the worst of a DM. They will assume two things of you as a DM, and you can take this to all you DMs out there. Please pay attention. This is very important. Your players will do one of two things. They will assume that they are smarter than you and they know what you're doing before you do. Or two, they will assume that you have this giant machination that has 36 hoops for them to jump through, and this is just but one of them. Those are the only two spectrums you will find your players at. Most of the time, they assume that the DM has this ultra nefarious stage of things that they have to do, and you're like, no, you guys, all you had to do is ask the wino out front. Like, seriously, that's like that's
On the plus side, with that particular scenario, they kind of screwed up because it came to the conclusion, based off of a bunch of spurious evidence that didn't make any sense. They came to the conclusion that the person responsible for the kidnappings was the head priest of the local temple because, people on this list, the list of people not being kidnapped, they all did crimes. So, and they probably confessed those crimes to the high priest, so he's probably kidnapping people because of their crimes. So they went to try and trap him by going and just confessing to crimes they never committed, which was a very interesting roleplay situation because one of them is like, I practice necromancy, ooh. And the high priest is like, well, that's not something that you should be doing, and it's very disrespectful to dead bodies and such. And they're like, all right, I give up. And then they leave. The next person comes in, and they just up the ante. I have been murdering people and stealing their foreskins. Whoa! Where did that come from?
Might be some unresolved child issues there.
Yeah.
To be fair, that did create for some great roleplay. So it ended up working out, even though the whole idea was screwed from the beginning.
Yeah, there's a
So my most nefarious puzzle
uh-oh.
was thrust upon the players by their own bad decision. They started off making fun of an old man in a bar because of the way I described him. And then when he asked them for a gold coin, he said it would bring them good fortune. And one of the asshole players hit him for asking for money.
Oh.
Well, if the paladin had even bothered, because this was back in 3.5, if the paladin had even bothered to activate his detect evil, he would have noticed that this was an unseelie fae.
Oops.
Yeah, and so as a result, it was a greater winter spirit, and the gold coin was supposed to secure the fall harvest. So, but instead, because they hit him, when they went to bed that night, they woke up on the floor of a dungeon, and about every 120 feet. Or no, I mean, like this. It was calling it a dungeon is a little generous. There were very few intersections, but most of the intersections would end with these unfathomably long pitfalls. And eventually the players ate their rations. There weren't any monsters. This was my favorite dungeon design I ever did. There wasn't a single monster in the design. Every time they encountered a crossroads, they were asked a question. And it was like a banal, like it wasn't a riddle, it was just a regular ass question, like about the characters and their interactions. And eventually they all started blaming each other for being in this predicament. And it was one of those puzzles. You remember those puzzles where it's a marble in an orb? And the orb
Yes.
has like a gajillion. Right. Every time they woke up,
every time they woke up, the perspective changed.
No.
So they basically, their whole objective was to not kill each other before reaching the end of this really circuitous path, and they failed miserably.
Yeah, that's.
It was awesome.
Hey there,
So
Dr. Diz. How you
I
guys
did have
doing?
a question for the other more experienced DMs on tonight. So I have decided to take the crazy task of trying to use the little bit of a guide that is included in Ghosts of Salt Marsh to incorporate some naval combat aspects, hopefully coming up into my campaign. Why do you think Dungeons and Dragons have not really, like, I've read over the instructions in there numerous times, and it's like it seems so clunky and kind of more complicated than it needs to be. Like it's I was looking for more of a straightforward guide and was wondering if you guys had any resources or insight.
Well, the reason why it's clunky, I can answer this, especially since my campaign's a pirate campaign, is because naval combat's clunky as fuck. I'll be completely honest. The best advice I can give you is take a look at the rules for flying in 3.5.
Okay.
The different
like
the
for
different
airships.
maneuverabilities. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, dragons specifically.
Dragons too, okay.
There's a resource called the Draconomicon. It goes way into detail. Just basically apply all of that to apply that sort of logic and the maneuverability aspects to the different categories of ships. And it'll flow a lot simpler. Keep in mind that everything is always moving on the water. You're never going to have an instance where your ship's completely still unless you've dropped anchor. And if you drop anchor, you can't move at all. So
Yeah.
it's not like, yeah.
No,
Yeah, so I feel
sorry.
like even when
I want to shout out to who is it? One Big Shot One for following. Thank you. Putting us one step closer, and I want to thank Mark for raiding with a party of 8.
Hello, everybody.
Hey!
hello.
Oh, Dreaded GM went off with the emotes.
Try to do some emotes to celebrate.
Yes.
Nightbot was like, no.
Yeah, Nightbot is mean.
I noticed Nightbot's been extra touchy today. That happened during a
I
stream
know.
earlier. Somebody
Yeah.
was trying to put. I was like,
It's
come on.
about the settings. Everybody who introduces Nightbot, they have to like readjust because Nightbot's like super finicky when you first.
Yeah.
Well, no, I've reset him so he's not supposed to do that unless you're putting like 50 of them on there. And it's still, once they hit like 10 or 12, he still just loses his mind. I think it's a coding issue more than it is a settings issue.
Agreed.
Constantly.
But yeah,
For your first go, by the way, at like trying to do naval combat, the best thing that you can do, honestly, is just have a map ready with just the water and just make 2 ships or however many ships are going to be involved and just go with have that visual in your head. Know how everything works, where everything goes, and then when people ask, I'm going to steer the ship over here so that we can board them, or I'm going to steer the ship over here so we can shoot them with naval cannons, or whatever they're going to do. Just be able to visualize that so that you can move things accordingly. Have ships on top of it, set up as like tokens or whatever you're doing, and just expand them so that they look realistically large, and then just have them fill the space so that they can maneuver. It's weird. And it's different from normal combat because normal combat is just run up to the things, hit them, or stay back and shoot them with things. With naval combat, you're kind of doing a bit of both.
Yeah.
And you're operating off of a theoretically 3D plane. So
Yeah.
I just am envisioning
the
that.
visualization is the main bit to get down.
So are you doing this on stream?
Yes.
Okay. So my advice actually takes kind of 2 of those. I would try to limit the amount of actual naval things to a minimum. Like, yes, this party is on a boat, this party is on a boat. Right? This group's on a boat, this group's on a boat. make that more narrative than rolling, because the
Okay.
the more you're like, oh, well, you have to make a water-based vehicles check. Okay, well, make me a water-based vehicles check, and then maybe every 5 turns have whoever's the person running the turning the ship go make another one for me. So they don't have to do it every turn, because it takes forever for a ship to turn. As somebody who's been on them, they take forever, especially wind sails.
Another thing is, with the sails unfurled, ships move crazy friggin' fast. Crazy fast in terms of combat.
My advice is to make it as much role playing and less rolling of dice playing.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Wow, with that.
Yeah, more to the point with what Rick was saying. Personally, unless they're trying to do a special maneuver like an anchor turn or a broadside or trying a ramming maneuver, I wouldn't even bother. Like, if somebody's proficient with water vehicles, then they know how to steer a ship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Like,
no, I always make them do it every couple of turns, like every 5 turns or so, because the stress of being shot at while you're doing it.
Yeah, the difference between just being on the open water and trying to steer a ship and like being in the midst of a battle,
Yeah.
is very different from each other. It's very similar to when you're just on a horse and you're piloting an animal and somebody attacks your horse. You gotta keep your horse steady.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's gonna get scared and it's gonna buck you off and all those sorts of things. So,
one big shot asked a good question. Want the ship be part of an initiative order? I would do that. I would have whoever's. That's a good idea. Like whoever is.
I disagree. I think that cuts it up. The thing is that ships, they're already moving. They're constantly, unless they have an anchor down, they're already moving. So it's less that they have an initiative order and more just at the top of the initiative order, they continue moving in whatever direction they have been steered in.
Yeah. And then whoever has the best, it's just like you think in Pirates of the Caribbean. Sorry for referencing that movie, but it's the first one that came to my head. But it's like it's a race to see who has the faster ship that can get into the best maneuver. It's not so much I'm gonna wait. It's not like lining up and like, oh, I'm gonna fire, you're gonna fire, No, it's whoever gets there first, who can turn away, who's presenting. I'm even thinking about like which part of the ship is presenting will put either the firing ship at disadvantage if So I'm going even that far, but the main thing that I'm doing is trying to make sure that I provide my players with the terminology so they actually sound like I made them a little like captains and crew cheat sheet book that has like different terminology, explains the different levels of the ship, and just kind of giving them the basic information about their ship so they know what their actions are, what they have to try to protect and reinforce.
In my particular opinion, the less things on an initiative order, the better.
Yeah.
Because if an initiative is too loaded up, then every round takes forever to get through. And that can be a slog, not just for you, but for the party as well. So the more things that you can streamline to just say at the top of the initiative order, this stuff happens.
Yep.
Better.
Well, what I was saying is, what I was taking off of that is each ship has an initiative, and then whoever's on that ship takes their initiative on the ship's turn. So you have everybody in this ship does their stuff, everybody on this ship, and then the initiative is based on the role of the 2 people steering the ship. It's water-based vehicle roll versus water-based vehicle roll. Whoever gets the best roll is the guy who's going to be in front, and theirs is going to be in the best thing. Also, Dreaded GM says probably want to do a whiteboard test run of your plan before you actually go live. So take it. Well,
we'll see if I have time for that.
Well, no,
just run like a small simulation for yourself. Just okay, let's just imagine that the fight happens, and we'll just like go through some potential things that they might do and see how quickly we get through it and how smoothly it runs based off of what I am doing.
Yeah, just turn on Roll20 and go, can I move this? Yeah.
Just get rid of it or find a way to streamline it.
Yeah. I really like with us talking about initiative. I do know that there's like I'm going to have just the captains roll initiative against each other, and then pretty much everyone on the ship is going to act as the ship's turn. So
Yeah.
and this is going to be a small crew. Like they have a kill boat, they have one ballista. I'm not setting them up to die or to have their ship ruined or anything, but it's like I just want to put enough of that, like, oh, there is actually some healthy competition out on the sea, and we have the tiniest little boat. Maybe we shouldn't try to go to a different continent yet. We're not quite ready for that yet. So it's like I'm giving them a taste of it, what's to come later on.
Yeah. Another thing, if you want a good, if you want a good reference for movies, I wouldn't reference that Disney movie. I would actually reference another movie. If you can find good clips of it. Master and Commander.
Oh, dude, I was just
Yes,
about to
that's such a
fucking
good
say
movie.
Master and
And
Commander.
I would look at some of those rough water scenes and one or two of their battle scenes. Just look up clips for those and watch those.
Yeah.
And
Or,
that's
or watch the show. What is it? Black Sails.
yeah. But that's harder
That's
to find.
a good
That's harder to find good clips of. You'd have to go through each episode to find it. Master and Commander has a lot of clips that are already parsed out on YouTube and things, so it'd be easier to find. And that'll give you a good sense of how things flow, because
Yeah.
the Disney-esque movie is more for story than it is for realism. And Master and Commander, they really had a bunch of sailboat guys that were out there to make sure that everything worked, knowing what they were doing. That's much better, to be honest. So, where are we here? Sorry, I'm going to scroll up. Hi, everyone. We are taking questions. We are now, because Nat had a question for us. Does anyone else in chat have a question for us? And while we're waiting on them to do so, give a little plug to DM the Mark Knight. Thank you guys for showing up. Thank you for hanging out. Appreciate it very much. I know you guys just got done streaming. I know it was a long little stream there. And I know Mark is probably in bed at this point because he has done two streams. Yeah, he's exhausted. Yeah, he did 2 streams. He does 2 streams on Wednesdays. But that is our sister.
Yes.
Nat, do you have the Ghosts of Saltmarsh book?
I do. That's one of the resources I was using.
Yeah, this all seems really comprehensive.
Okay.
If you'd like, I wouldn't mind talking it over with.
I would love that. I think it's more that I haven't done it before and I haven't seen it used enough. Like I keep trying to find videos on YouTube of people that have posted about the naval, and it's like not so much that people have done the naval combat component, but they're like more just following the storyline, which eventually we'll get there. But it's like I was just looking for more of like a hey, let me try this out and try it alongside.
Yeah.
And it's some of the things in there just seem like I am very narrative heavy, so I think it's also like what can I do to like simplify it a little bit more so it still makes sense, but still use it,
Yeah.
So
there's a question from Dark Dreamer. Have you ever run a campaign with airships, and are there any recommendations that you would make to adapt the combat rules so that pilots can navigate in 3D space? Yes, I have. I have run several of them, and the best thing I can give you is go back to 2nd edition and look at Spelljammers. Pick up the Spelljammers box set if you can find it. Go through the rules there, because those are the most comprehensive rules for airships. It's very comprehensive because the Spelljammer ships operate in space, which is by definition 3-dimensional. So I definitely recommend Spelljammer. Also, Spelljammer just has a lot of cool stuff in it. Like, it's a really good setting. I was disappointed they didn't do more with it in 2nd edition. But that is my best recommendation. That D&D has Talosorian Games already did that before D&D was bought by Wizards of the Coast. TSR did a huge thing about that, and they were very, very specific about it. So that's where I would get my stuff.
Something to point out, though, is if you're going to have a campaign that centers very much around airships, plural, very much so, this almost kind of entails this is either going to be a high technology, in comparison, relatively speaking, campaign, or a high fantasy campaign as well. So those are things that are also going to have to be looked at. I think the main thing to bear in mind is if you've got an airship that runs on magic, or something along those lines, chances are good you're going to end up like airship fighting a dragon or something, or like a flock of wyverns or wyvern riders.
Yes,
there's
a lot
of things that you might end up dealing with. And as such, like, don't just think about the airship combat. That is going to be very important moving forward because you're making it sort of the centerpiece of the campaign. But also bear in mind the like levels of magic that are available for your world as well. That's like a big thing to deal with.
Yeah,
because if you have an airship campaign and for the first like 6 levels, the only thing that your characters end up like finding magic wise is maybe a +1 blade, I think you're underestimating the amount of magic in your world.
Yeah,
is what I would say. So like
that's why I like Spelljammers, because Spelljammer ships are specifically powered by the Spelljamming chair, which requires a high level mage to sit in and basically dump all his magic to get it to move at all. So they're very rare because it requires I think you have to be at least 10th or 12th level to even pilot a Spelljammer, and they travel from world to world, not on your world. Like, they can't travel very well inside of normal space. That once they land, it's kind of like a starship from,
or like Dune with the spice.
Oh, I was going to say Warhammer 40K. That sounds like warp travel if I've ever heard of it.
Well, no, it's more of, no, there's plenty of fights and stuff that takes place in space, but once they're so bulky, once they get into air, that they're so hard to control, it's just, you just land it and then get out. So, kind of like the Federation starships where they're like, yeah, that's cool, we can land it. Can you fight in the atmosphere? No, not really. Why? Because we're like 6 miles long. Like, that's, we don't maneuver very well inside a tight space. So, yeah, I think those are really good.
Mentioning earlier, I talked about how like one of my big things as a DM that I think makes me a pretty decent one is my improvisational skills. Just based off of what we were just discussing, I just came up with an entire world setting and campaign idea that I think would be really freaking fun to do. Essentially, the idea is that dragons had a major war with the regular people of the land, whatever this land might be called, and then the resulting cataclysmic effects of the massive levels of magic that mashed back and forth caused most of the land to end up flooding. But many of the humans and many of the other races were able to get together to create these massive airships that took them into like large mountains that they ended up making cities on top of. And based off of that, they end up having to traverse between each major cities, which are all on top of mountains, like separated by oceans of water created by the cataclysmic war that happened before. And the main thing that they have to do is they have to use these airships that are essentially an armada at this point in order to hunt down the last of the dragons so that they can work on potentially fixing the world and making it better. And then that dragon has like an entire cult that worships it.
Yeah, see?
It's like fucking on wyverns. They're riding like drakes. They're riding all sorts of like winged creatures that all serve this last of the dragons. Yeah. Like, I just had this whole idea in my head, and I'm like, I could make that an easy, like, 100-session campaign.
Yep. And my recommendation would be to pick up the Dragons of Odyssey books from their Kickstarter or their website, because I've used some of them. They have dragon riders where you basically start off in they're like the Ranger Beastmaster, but you get a baby dragon that you train and then can ride.
I don't want to rain on a parade, but I feel like we're losing the thread of the original question.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. We do that though, here,
Yeah, we do that a lot here.
Absolutely.
Do you have a question?
My only suggestion for handling airship combat is there are rules in place, rules as written for 5th edition regarding aerial combat. Take a look at those and then see how well, if at all, that they mesh with the ship-to-ship combat established in Ghosts of Saltmarsh.
They don't.
I mean, they're basically the same rules. Just one has more verticality. Regardless, there's being the DM, your objective is narrative more than it is mechanical. Which is why, me personally, until the players earn enough money to buy their own ship and decide to do that, then there's somebody else in charge.
Well, yeah, obviously. I'm not starting off some level. I'm not. Until you're level like 9, you don't get to have your ship.
Right, but my point, my main point is that they don't need to worry about all that.
Yeah.
They don't need to worry
at the moment. Yeah.
Right,
Sure.
exactly. Unless they ask, hey, can we do this? Or hey, how does this work? Then honestly, it doesn't have to. You can just make up whatever you want. That's what's awesome about D&D.
That's why I'm waiting till like the week before, or like a couple days before it might happen to like actually figure this out. I'm like, oh, they might actually ask me about that because they already knew. They've known for, I want to say like 5 sessions that they were getting this ship because they inherited it after doing a quest, and then it needed to be repaired. So they sent it ahead to be repaired and use the ship itself as collateral. So if you don't get there in time to pay for it, the company that fixed it up is just going to sell it. So they're already like, oh my God, we can go, like look at the other 5 continents and like, oh, okay. So we're already thinking about continent travel when that has nothing to do with the current campaign line.
I have not come up with other continents yet, so good of you to start thinking about that.
They're just like doodles on the edge of my like current continent map. So I mean, and I already know.
I'm in the middle of making a city for one campaign that's essentially its own city-state because it's so massive and it's so large and it has hundreds of thousands of people in it and it's got like so much money. And making that city alone has been taking a lot of time.
That's
just one city.
So here's a question I want to ask each of you. We'll start with Actherion. Have you ever just killed your party, or killed a member of the party because that was just that like you had reached the breaking point with the party or this character doing things, and have you ever just gone, all right, that's enough. You've crossed the line into now I'm going to use my DM powers and slaughter you for for disobeying the DM gods.
Honestly, several of my players have been in enough of my TPKs to know that I'm never fucking around. So I don't really get pushed in that direction. I mean, I'm not saying that I go out of my way to kill the party, but if like I'm giving the party the option to run away from a fight and they just charge right in and get the entire party killed, that ain't my fault. They did that.
It's the dice's fault.
Yeah, it's the player's fault.
Yeah.
Action economy dictates a lot of what people should be getting themselves into as far as fights.
I 100% agree with that.
And they do not pay attention sometimes.
No, I've made it very clear from the beginning that actions have consequences. So it's pretty much they can do whatever they want. If they want to kill the most important person in the storyline, well, actions have consequences, And I didn't directly kill a player. It was more like this player was glory stealing from other players, like me, and also metagaming. So there was times where he was straight up trying to tell other players how to roll their characters or how to like act as their characters, where he was like, no, your character wouldn't do that, and then it was his turn, and then he did the same thing that he told the character not to do, even if it wasn't aligned with his character.
One of those.
Yes.
My
I had a
I'm
private.
sorry.
It's okay. There's a little bit more, and then I'm swear I'm done with him. There was, I tried to have a conversation with him privately, as a couple of party members were like, "Oh, there's, I'm upset about this." So they were unwilling to talk about it or change it all. So there you go. They decided to leave the game, and he just, saw a goblin across the battlefield. They ran towards each other and embraced in ungodly kisses and hugs and ran off into the sunset together. And the party still does not know what happened to him to this day.
What about you, Lundy?
Funny.
Have you ever put the foot down?
I've never, as a GM, I should specify, cut off players for pushing the envelope too much. I have given them consequences for doing stuff, and normally that's more closer to the beginning of campaigns when I have players who've never played with me before and they're trying to test my boundaries. I'll make it very clear. If you do stuff, there's consequences. I had a group, I want to say about a year and a half ago, and one of the first things they did in session 2, after session 1, they all met up and decided to be friends and stuff. Session 2, they found out that the town's local herbalist was kidnapped, so they went to investigate the house, and they're like, we should just steal everything in this house. And I'm like, okay. But one of them was like, I don't know, we should be stealing and stuff. And I said, while you guys are arguing, a couple guards do approach you because the house is kind of being monitored as a result of it being a crime scene. And they start asking you what you're doing. And they start panicking. They start talking what do we do? Do we run? I can run out the window. I can jump out the window. No, fuck it. There's 6 of us. There's 2 of these guards. We can kill these guards. While you guys are arguing, and you also mentioned killing the guards, one of them blows their whistle. And now there's about 9 more guards coming to your it's just letting it naturally progress to the point where they're like, okay, we fucked up.
But there's a great storyline there, right?
it caused a great storyline. Now they're criminals on the run. But I've never had to kill anybody as a GM. I have had people who intentionally push my buttons when I'm a player, though. Up and to the point where I actually engage in legitimate PvP. And sometimes they not only aggravate me intentionally to provoke it, but sometimes they'll make it so that it will not end when one of us is just knocked out. It has to end when
with
one
a
of us
death.
is dead. So they'll intentionally do that just to provoke me. I don't understand why they do that. It's only happened maybe 3 times over the course of my time as a player, so it's not often.
My DM has killed me multiple times for insignificant reasons. I've had a DM that killed my character because I was playing my character. At the beginning of the story, at level 1.
I mean, that's just a bad DM.
However, I have also I'm not ashamed to admit I have had players who have pushed the buttons and pushed the limits and think they can get away with whatever they want inside a city, and they wanted to start a bar fight because that's what he did in every town, and I asked the player to stop doing that because it takes away from the story. Sure as shit, after the next time we played, first tavern they walk into, he punches a guy, and I was like, okay. And I killed him because he picked on a retired fighter. The guy was 12th level. He was 4th. The guy didn't need his sword and armor to beat you. He's 12th level. He's got a steak knife. You're dead. And he's like, well, how many hit points this guy got? More than you. More than your whole party. I'm sorry, but you have to. At some point, you have to go, okay, maybe the player just doesn't understand. And then you have a talk with them, and then they still don't understand. You're like,
I think with that, in that sort of a scenario, the way that I would have probably handled it is every time he gets into a bar fight, it causes such a massive chaos that the party just has to leave town, and just make it so that it's a hindrance for the party in game to the point where the party is looking at the guy being like, "You need to fucking stop."
Yeah,
that would be probably the way that I would handle it.
I was about to say
Oh, that's a good question.
It wasn't until the assassin had killed everybody else in that puzzle dungeon that he realized that he was the reason that he was now going to be trapped in there forever.
Yeah.
So I don't like killing I don't like killing the characters of bad players. I like getting them to kill themselves or kill each other. That's one of the reasons. Right. That's one of the reasons that I'm a huge fan of waiting a couple of sessions before giving them their comeuppance.
Yeah.
Mostly because at that point, then they start blaming each other instead of blaming me.
Yeah. Okay, so Francois, is it necessarily bad that your DM killed you off for playing your character? I mean, we don't have full picture, but under what context do you mean playing your character? If your character is bioed as a provocative asshole, isn't punishment or realistic reactions warranted? To give you the backstory, I was playing a Gully Dwarf Barbarian wearing piecemeal armor at level 1 on Kryn. The DM said I could play it. I worked out the backstory. He had, we started on an island with this huge spread of food, like this, make sure I get this right, a 15-foot long table with anything you can think of on the table. And it was just there, and we were told by a magic mouth to enjoy ourselves, and he would be with us shortly. So my 2-foot-tall barbarian climbed up onto the table and started eating as much as he could because he grew up a urchin, because nobody likes Gully Dwarfs on Kryn. I didn't stop eating when the guy stopped talking, and he killed me. I'm like, I'm a barbarian. I'm just going to sit here and keep eating. I'm not stop. Like, I wasn't interrupting the guy. I was just like, I'm just going to keep eating. Is that all your guys? Is that all?
You can't multitask.
Yeah. I'm like, I can listen. Like, I wasn't going to listen to him anyway. He's a mage. I don't care about mages. Like, let the paladin talk to you. Like, that's his job. You said I could eat. I'm going to eat. He said, you're not paying attention. I'm like, okay, that's, it got all, but this was also the same DM that, we were level 6 and had 1+1 dagger between us. So, as opposed to the other, huh?
That sounds like a bad DM, bro.
We had two DMs. We had, like I said, last week, I think it was last week, we had DMs where, our DMs were either you can't have magic items, so you're 6th level, and here's your 1+1 dagger, or play whatever you want in any book you want. Use all the stuff in 3. And you've played 3.5 considerably, and so have you, Lundy. All the accessory books by Kobold and Green Ronin, and we had all of that. Yeah, we had all of that stuff. Anything that was printed for 3.5, we owned it. And he said, yeah, go ahead, play whatever you want. And then wondered why the game didn't last more than 2 months. Because, when you're playing characters, you're like, all right, that's fine. I'll play the warrior with the fighting style that if you miss my armor class by 5, I get a free attack of opportunity on you. Or if you hit me, if you make contact with me, I get an attack of opportunity. And then I have cleave, greater cleave, superior greater cleave, improved greater cleave. Sorry. We were playing that Mezzo Branzan book adventure from 3.5. And there's a bridge that's like 120 feet long. And my fighter and my friend's fighter moved 60 feet down the bridge and killed probably 35 drow before either one of us took our main attack for our turn.
I remember the one time my friend decided to try that, and then we did it, and then it didn't work out. Was when I was like, "Can I make a Githyanki mummy?" And he was like, "Yeah." So I started off with like a 26 strength.
Yeah, all of that stuff. That was where 3.5 and Pathfinder, honestly, both like really like. Why would you make those options? Like, yeah, I'm gonna be.
Well, it was just supposed to be templates, bro.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be a half demon, half dragon. That's what I'm gonna be. It's gonna be great. I am going to start off at essentially a CR 7 at level 1.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
I mean, it was
a good idea.
That was before we really understood. That was before I really understood templates. Like, I was like, why the hell would anybody pick a player race other than Houndarkin? Because Houndarkin's busted as fuck. And that's because I didn't realize that it essentially turns you into a 10th level character.
Yeah, you don't get XP forever. So we have some new people. Hi, Sweet Poison 02 from Scotland. Everybody wave, say hi. Glad to have you here on the stream. Thanks for following. And Dr. Diz, who was on here last week. Hey, Diz. Glad you could join us. He has a question. We'll start with Ash. Do you change your DM style to fit the party that is playing, or do you expect the party to adjust your style of DMing? That's a really good one.
Yes and no. So what I do is I kind of generate like a sentence to describe the campaign that I want to run, and then I feel out people that possibly want to play. We have a session 0 where at that point is when we hash out all of like the nitty gritty detail questions about what I kind of my DMing style, and then they tell me what their playing style is, and then we kind of find this happy medium. And then I always have like a standing thing with my players that if they feel that I ruled on something in game that not just that they're not happy about, but stop them from doing something they wanted to do, I'm okay with them asking me during a session, like, hey, DM, like, I was trying to do this because, and then short explanation. And I was like, okay, well, if you could tell me how you actually feasibly did that, then we can go ahead and incorporate that. So that's why I say yes and no, because I kind of lay out what I do and I kind of find out what their expectations are for me. And then post session, we have a little 10-question questionnaire that I fill out with them, where it goes over what their favorite parts of session were, what their least favorite parts, what I could do to make it more fun for them. So I incorporate a lot of player feedback, and then
What about you, Lundy?
Oh, I actually like 100% completely changed my DMing style based off of whoever I'm playing with. I very much like the other people who've been on here before, and also some people here present. I am a paid GM, and as such, I offer the service of GMing, and as such, I believe myself to be subservient to the desires of my players specifically. So when I sorry, I'm just making sure that my connection's okay. You can hear me all right?
Yeah, you're fine.
Yep.
Yeah,
you're good.
So I necessarily ask them at a session 0 every single detail as to what they want from me as a GM. Now, as far as like knowing all the rules and stuff, I can just consider that fundamental. And rolling with raw, I consider that fundamental until they ask me differently. But when it comes to creating a story, if I'll ask them, do you want this to be open world, and how open world would you like it to be? Most people want an open world game. So I'll have a scale 1 to 3. 1 being that it is technically an open world, but I'm going to keep you on one very specific path throughout the entirety of this campaign, the best that I can, to make sure that you stay focused. This is good for people who have like problems with attention issues, or that they get lost very easy in a campaign. They don't know what the hell they're supposed to be doing. I will accommodate that by saying, all right, well, if you go with a 1 on the scale of 1 to 3, then I will put you on that path, and I will keep you on that path, and I'll hold your hand on that path. If it's a 2, then I will always provide plot hooks to move forward, but I will always give options to do other stuff, to branch out, to do whatever it is, whatever else they would like to do. And if it's a 3, I have a greater narrative in mind, But if they want to run with something else entirely, or they get a wild hair up their ass and they're like, I'm going to turn this into a SimCity simulator, totally fine with that. I can roll with it. We can go with whatever you want to do. So that's sort of that scale. And then I have another scale. How dark or how light do you want this campaign to be? Do you want it to be a 1, super family friendly, everything is sunshine and rainbows? Maybe a couple people die to give an idea that there's something like serious going on in the background, but you don't know who they are and it happened off screen, so it's not going to be an issue. Or all the way up to 10, where I just call it "fuck me up, sir," where there is going to be death, there is going to be assault of all sorts of like terrible natures. There's going to be torture. There's going to be just slavery, evil stuff happening, and you're going to be front row and center for this. What on the scale of 1 to 10 do you want me to be at? and I lay out every single type that they can ask for. And I think the last scale that I have as far as like my DMing stuff is concerned is essentially like how combat oriented versus role play oriented do you want this to be? Now, most people say they want a balance, but I say obviously you want a balance.
Be right back.
The point of this scale is not, do you want it to be only combat or only role play? Everybody wants a mix. The question is, where do you want me to lean and how far do you want me to lean in that direction? Because I will incorporate both. The question is, do you want to fight like 3 times a session or maybe once every other session?
Yeah,
that's what I'm asking you.
Yeah.
So I give them a sliding scale for that as well. So there's just a lot of different stuff that I do to let them tailor me to be the GM that they want.
Right.
So basically the answer to that question is I 100% tailor myself to my players.
What about you, Ak?
The story is about the characters, not the DM. Now, while that may sound like I tailored the experience, I let the characters decide how shit's gonna go down. If they want to pick fights, if they want to like case a joint, do a lot of RP, fuck around in a bar for an hour and a half. It's what the characters want to do. And that's how I feel about it. So the DM experience I try to provide is one of a loose narrative structure that allows for characters to influence the world around them, as opposed to building that world for them.
Yeah, so my answer is actually a little different than what we've had here. I don't have a DM style. Not in the strictest sense as you would see it. My DM style is, I say, here's an overarching plot. This is what the bad guys are doing. And then I say, okay, here's where you guys are starting. Go. And then everything that happens is based off the characters. My job, I don't see myself as a dungeon master per se. I see myself as an actor who is there to play everybody who's not the players. Right? This is a giant movie, and I am everybody except the stars. I'm all the extras. I'm all the monsters. I'm all the background. I'm all the weather. My job is to do everything like that. And like Ash said, and we've said it before, I think we've mentioned this for the past, all 3 episodes we've had. Do not forget to have a session 0 before you start. We cannot stress this enough. Have a session 0. Sit down with your players and explain. So here's what I expect. What do you expect? And find that ground, because if you expect one thing, like I did a session 0 with Alex, who plays on my Sunday night stream, and it was, here's how I'm going to do these things. This is not a fun. This is not the world they're playing in, there aren't any cities except two, the two dwarven cities. So they didn't get to start with more than one metal object because metal was rare, because there aren't any forges except for the dwarves. There's no cities. You guys aren't, they're not starting where they can just run from city to city and pick up food and, you know, everything's all hunky-dory, we can sleep in the end. There aren't any. So that's what the expectation for the setting is. What do you guys want? And then they told me and asked me the questions, and then we're like, okay, we came to an agreement. Cool, here's the game. And that's how I see myself. I see myself as, my job is only to make sure that there's a plot of some sort. It could be, like Wendy was talking about, do you want to be herded down the path like a book adventure, or do you want me to go, here's the world, good luck? Those are the two, and I kind of find myself in the middle where I always tell my players, you guys can do whatever you want. The bad guys are doing their thing, right?
They will continue doing it,
Yeah.
whether you interact or not.
Yes, whether you interact or not, the big bad evil guy is going to try to complete his plans. Now, if you guys want to spend the next 6 weeks setting up a bakery and selling, you know, apple pies through your network of urchins that your rogue has set up for you, that's fine. That's okay. The bad guys are still taking over something, right? Their plot line is still going forward. And Sweet Poison had despite DMing, I've got a question. Despite DMing for 3.5 years and having a co-op DM to help me, I honestly am very uncertain about combat and always stress about it. That works brilliantly as my is the combat one. My co-DM is the combat one. He is great at combat while not as great at roleplay and intrigue is where I come in. Sometimes he's not there. Do you have any advice for making sure it's balanced and flows well?
So with all combat, just already have it in your head what the combat is going to be. Now, for your players, it's perfectly fine for them to believe that whatever you're doing is straight off the cuff, but don't try to do that.
No.
Every time you try to just do a random encounter where you're just like, meh, they're currently traveling somewhere, so there's probably something that's going to attack them, and then you just go to like a randomizer and you're like, what's going to attack them today? And you just start throwing stuff on there. Like, don't do that. Already know what's going to happen, know what's in the area, know what's probably going to attack them, and as such, you read up on the monsters that are going to attack them, or the creatures, or the people, whatever those might be, or depending on if it's like a combat encounter that's plot relevant, like they're going to run into this particular like thieves guild, or they're going to run into like the sewers to figure something out, and there's got to be monsters down there. If you already know that they're going to be going to a place, that's key as well, and just know the mechanics of everything that's going to be fighting the characters. And then from there, just know the basics of what they would probably do. Dumb things aren't going to think tactically. They're not going to attack tactically unless they're like wolves and they're like, yeah, we hunt things because we flank things. Okay, they're probably going to flank because that's what wolves do. But you know, they're dumb. If like half of them are dead and none of the PCs are, they're running. They're getting out of there. They're not going to deal with this. Like there's a lot of us that are dead. This is not good. We're going to run. Now, if it's a human, they might be a little bit more stubborn, maybe a little bit more zealotous. It's dependent on their motivations, whatever that motivation may be. Are they extremely loyal to the organization that they're fighting on behalf of? Are they just there as like a hired mercenary and they just found out that your party is way above their pay grade and they decide to get the hell out of there? All of those things are things to bear in mind. Just the basic idea to try not to overload you. Know the things that your party is going to fight. Inside and out, stat-wise, action-wise, and motivation-wise, and intelligence, and why they're there. Know all of those things, and from there, you should be able to run a fairly decent combat round or encounter, just based off of those things. So long as all those things, you should be good.
What about you, Ash?
Sorry, my muse has decided to join me.
Oh, that's good. We like puppies. They make the viewer count go up.
That's what I thought. So yeah, I definitely, like I said, I write mine more like a story. So I already know, what type of monsters they're going to interact with in a certain area. And I kind of have, I leave the number of them until later, and then I use D&D Beyond's combat creator to kind of help me finite everything right before we actually go in. And I have it already set up, saved, ready to go. Use it to run the combat, makes it go really smooth. I did try so I now have the ability for viewers to give my players magic beans. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with that magical item. So the players were given one last session, and it summoned a monster. It rolled 100, so I was not expecting that. And I, luckily it was right before a break. Looked up the monster, plugged it in, and used it. So I mean, if I didn't have a break, it would have been an awkward, like, guys, give me 10 minutes here to figure this out. So it's different when you play, in person, compared to when you're playing online. Playing in person, I think, is a little bit more forgiving, because you're like, oh, this is a great time for a bio break, or let's go get snacks while the DM figures out what they need to do. So definitely have a plan before you do it.
What about you, Ak?
You there, Banana Boy?
All right, I'll go ahead and answer while we're reading on that theory and get back. So for me, I think the best way to get better at combat. Oh, there's an echo. Ectherian, you're echoing me, buddy. Is it
Try
you?
again?
Okay. Yep, I still hear it.
Echoing you. How about now?
No.
Awesome.
Okay, so for me, I'm going to give you the easiest way to run combat. Requires nothing but time, and the free time that you have is what you can do with it. Read the monster manual.
Yeah.
Read the monster manual like a book. Start at A, end in Z. I cannot stress that enough. There are so many DMs that don't read the books like they're books. Pick up the player's handbook. If you want to be a better DM, just the easiest way to do it. Start with the player's handbook. Read the player's handbook all the way through. Then read the DMG all the way through. You don't have to take notes or anything. Just read it once all the way through. Read the monster manual all the way through. Because that will give you the best basis. You're like, oh, I remember that they said something about that in the DMG. And then you can go find it. It's so much easier after you've read it. Read the monster manual for combat. Monster manual is the best thing for combat. Because once you're like, you'll start finding that you find monsters that you really enjoy. So when you need to throw in a monster, you'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that the Bodak is some sort of undead that I really like. And you can throw that in. Also, if you're going to do random encounters, I have a random encounter table of the random encounters that my party could run into. And then it's not just monsters. People always think that a random encounter table has to be full of 1d20 monsters. Right? There's a list of 20 and there's 20 monsters. No. My list has like 16 monsters, 15 monsters, and then there's a traveling salesman, there's a burned out hut, there's just random stuff that you would happen across, like another adventuring party. Okay, just stuff that doesn't have to be combat.
Cards that invites you over to have yourself some fun with them.
Yeah,
and
just
you end up getting super drunk, and then you wake up the next day, and all of you are in different spots in the area, and you got to find each other. And also, you're missing some of your items.
Yeah,
pretty sure those got stolen.
Yeah,
And with your guidebooks, take it a step further. Like, I put tabs in mine for things because I'm a relatively new GM, so I need to know, I did that for my player's handbook and for my GM guide. So tab it. It's yours.
Yeah, those are like I said, a lot of DMs think that you can read the DMG and that's it. and that's not right.
Nope.
Read the player's handbook first, because that's the information your players are going to have access to all the time. Your players are going to say, but in the player's handbook it says, and if you don't know the player's handbook, that is going to cause you a ton of problems. The DMG is for all the stuff that your players don't think about, like weather, traveling in the snow, how much weight can your mule carry before it's encumbered, what to do if they run into a demon that does things. Like, there's all that extra stuff that your players don't have access to. And then read the monster manual, because the monster manual does two things. One, it better prepares you for combat all the time. And two, it always, I don't care how many times I've ever read a monster manual or a fiend folio, I always come across a monster that I forgot about and go, oh yeah, that's going in my next game. You always run into a monster and you're like, oh, I totally forgot that guy existed. Because there's so many of them. And you go, oh, I can totally build an encounter around this. And that fits into my story. Like, this guy would be great to put inside my abandoned temple.
There's a book. Sorry.
Go ahead.
There's a book that Izzy uses, and it's definitely on my wish list. I borrowed it from another DM. The Monsters Know What They're Doing.
Oh yeah, excellent book.
I love that book because that is my approach with monsters. Like, my players, like, they're like, oh, like, I never attack just one person. It's like, let me think about what this monster is trying to do. It's trying to save its own skin. So yeah, it's going to attack the closest person to it. And sorry if it's the same person over and over again, because they're your tank. But, it's like, you have to think as a monster.
Yeah.
And that's the fun part of being a DM. So.
Yeah, the Monsters Know What They're Doing is an excellent resource. Like we said, I think that personally, to run easier combat, the other thing that you have to do is just run combat. Just run it. Don't be afraid of it. Run it. Get it wrong. That's fine. Yeah, getting it wrong. There's an old saying, and it's a truism because it's true. Failure is the best teacher.
Heck yes.
Being bad at something will only make you better at it eventually. It's just how the human brain works. So don't be afraid. I mean, I have horrible anxiety about running a game online, doing this kind of stuff online. I get so anxious, like the half hour, 45 minutes before my streams start. But I do it anyway. And then once I start, I'm like, yeah. I mean, Alex, would you know that I was anxious when we played our last game?
Thinking back on it, maybe a little bit.
I mean, it's like, really? You have those feelings too? But no, seriously, it's like, I get so excited for the next session that's like, it's feeding. I'm like sitting here like 30 minutes before. Actually, no, I'm not even going to lie. I tell my players to get on 30 minutes before. I'm already doing DM stuff for like 2 hours at least before my stream starts. Just like double checking maps, making sure I have all the combat right, and just like checking out, like, I have a whole system of like trying to get ready, and it's never enough. But if you can figure out how to just like let it go and let everything just fall, like let things happen, and nobody's gonna know that you fucked something up or that you forgot to introduce this NPC, or nobody's gonna know that but you. But as long as you just kind of like, okay, roll with it, like make a little mental note, change some things up as you're going, you'll be fine.
All right. When you design an encounter, have a plan. Have a plan of attack. Basically, look at the composition of the enemy. Assess their general level of knowledge and intelligence. Give them basic tactics that they'll use. Do not roll initiative for every individual creature in the encounter.
Nope.
Oh my god. Generally, enemies of the same type typically go at the same time. It's just a sort of like, if you've got hobgoblins and bugbears, like in Mark's campaign,
Yeah.
The hobgoblins all go at the same time. The bugbears all go at the same time.
Yeah.
Give them basic tactics. Give them conditions for, like, say, if the fight's not going their way, they'll back up and start using ranged attacks. They'll retreat. They'll run away. Don't be afraid, especially with like some of the lower level humanoids, like goblins and kobolds. They will chicken the fuck out and run.
Yeah, they're all about saving their hide.
That's why they get to disengage as a bonus action. They just fucking bounce.
Yeah. So we have another question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The pace of combat, it's part of it is also part of the anxiety incurred by running combat encounters is when you is also born due in part to not having a whole lot of faith in your players to be ready for combat. That if your players aren't ready, like they're not sure how their character sheets work, like it's not just important for you to understand the rules. Players that don't understand the rules, or like, and you might have to take some time out of character, like outside the campaign to discuss how their character works with them, so that they can understand it and be better prepared to participate. Because a lack of participation leads to people not having fun, and not having fun is what leads to people having anxiety about running combat encounters.
Yeah. A good point. We have another question, and it's getting up on towards the 3-hour mark, so we're gonna answer this one and have a quick.
If you would, are you talking about Dr. Diz?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you mind if I start with that one?
Sure. I find that combat with 7 or 8 players can be horribly slow. Does anyone have any experience with large party combat, and do you have any tricks or tips to speed up combat? Go ahead.
Doubling up on actions basically is where you have 2 players go simultaneously. Because everybody rolls their own dice and can designate their own targets, you can essentially get double the number of people through the initiative at the same time. It's easier if you block it out based on who goes at more. Like, it's really easy if people have the same initiative roll, because in the order of combat, they're going the same time.
Yep.
So like, say you've got a player that rolls a 15, another player that rolls a 10, and 2 players that roll an 8, then you've got a 10, a 15, 2 16s, 2 9s, an 8 and a 7. Have the 8 and the 7 go at the same time. Have the people that got the same initiative at the same time, and go at the same time. And then you're essentially looking at a party size of about 4. If you're worried about the thing is that when players have the time to describe their attacks in detail, I would really I wouldn't worry about it unless they kill something. Like, let them describe the killing blow.
I don't like that.
Okay, Lundy, we'll let Lundy take this one next, and then we'll get to you, Ash, and then I'll answer, and then we'll do our wrap up.
So very similarly, I am one of those players who likes to try and do a little bit of detail with most of my attacks. Usually, sometimes I feel a little drained and I don't do it, but normally I do enjoy, even if I'm not killing something, I do enjoy to describe what I'm doing. I do that as a GM too. I like to just, if a player is not describing their attack, I will describe their attack for them to make it a little bit more interesting. If you want to make combat go by quicker, instead of having players potentially step on each other's toes, which I foresee as being the problem with the doubling up idea, have a talk with your players. Like, again, this would be something that you could address in session 0. and something that you would accommodate over time as everybody acclimates to the fact of the matter. If you have 8 players, they already know there's going to be a lot of players. So tell them during the session 0, if you to make combat run a little bit more smoother, I would like everybody to already know what they're going to do for their turn when it is their turn. And in order to enforce this, if I say it's your turn and you take more than 15 seconds to start telling me what you're going to do, if you keep humming and hawing and stuff like that, we're going to skip you and get back to you at the end of the initiative. That would be one way to do it. And this is it seems a little harsh, but the players are going to get bored too. This is for their benefit mostly. If they have to wait for like 20-30 minutes for a singular round to get down to them, especially if they roll the lowest on the initiative, they're going to lose interest, they're going to lose focus, they're not going to know what's going on, and they're not going to know what they're going to be doing because they haven't been thinking about it, or they thought about it, but a half hour has passed and they forgot. So,
or their target is gone.
Know what you're doing. When it is your turn, know what you're doing, do it.
See, that's exactly. But okay, so that sort of idea. Just everybody, you got to allow table talk when you've got 8 players.
Oh yeah.
No, you don't.
Have to.
No, you don't.
You absolutely do not. Now, as far as the table talk is concerned, listen, if the players can't adapt to each player making a decision, that's a problem they're going to have to deal with. They have the time outside of encounters to come up with battle strategies for anything that they come across. They don't need to do that mid-combat. If they get caught off guard, then they need to be able to adapt to that as well. Now with new players, I'm willing to be a little bit more accommodating for like the first several sessions, but they're going to have to start figuring out what they're going to be doing real quick. And I think that this also helps in other aspects as well, because when you're forced to think on your feet like that, then it also helps you in other aspects of playing D&D in the first place. It helps you with solving puzzles because you start trying to think about it real quick, as opposed to, I'm just going to sit here and think about it for the next 20 minutes and see if an idea pops into my head. It helps you with role play, because if you're getting used to thinking on your feet, then role play becomes a lot more easy for you to do and a lot more fluid for you to accomplish. If people are discussing tactics mid-combat, that's going to drag things no matter what you do. Even in your scenario of doubling up, it's still going to drag things out a lot. And even then, if one person's like, I have an idea, and then they're going the same time as another person who has a completely different idea, that could start an argument. So, you definitely don't want that. This is just going to elongate it further. So, know what you're going to do. And if you need to adapt to what other people are doing as they have their turns, so be it. Yeah, I'm giving you 15 seconds to get an idea. There's only so many things that you can do. It's 5e. It's not that complicated. Especially if you're a martial class. You're going to run and you're going to hit something, or you're going to stay back and you're going to shoot something. That's probably what you're going to do. So
hold on a second before we get too far into the weeds here. I'll let Ash answer the question. So, do you have a lot of experience with 8 or 9, 7 or 8 players?
I mean, I'm at 6 to 7 players, depending on if everyone's there. So, I mean, they're still trying to figure out, and like we're only on session like 5 with real combat, so they're still trying to figure out how they all work together. But I'm starting to see, like, even though I'm letting them trip over their feet, I'm letting them figure it out, and there's been some really interesting like combo attacks that they've just come up with, knowing and having that experience of working together and figuring out who, because like I don't let them straight up be like, I'm a cleric, I'm a rogue, I don't let them do that. It's a complete mystery until their characters actually get to know each other. So I think there is something in the matter of like, yes, you want to streamline combat, but there's also beauty in letting your players struggle through it. So, I mean, I don't have anything like, if I have a tie initiative, they are going simultaneously, and it's happening when it's happening. And that's just kind of how I've done that. And it's just, kind of just, yeah, like you as a DM can move it along, like, and make sure your players know how combat works. I gave all of my players a cheat sheet explaining exactly what they could do during combat. You know, they have different choices, and it's like this big circle that goes around and explains this all happens in 6 seconds. So you need to, like, you know, move your keister on this. So that's just how I do it.
Yeah.
Something to bear in mind, just to add on to the whole like party, like being able to crosstalk and like strategize and do tactics and stuff. Most of the time, a party it's a party that's probably have just met each other for the most part, or they probably haven't fought with each other for very long. So chances are good they don't have any tactics. So why would they have tactics going into any particular fight? These guys have never fought with each other before.
Yep.
So it doesn't really make sense to like tell them, like, if you need some time to talk about the way in which you're gonna strategize this. No. The round takes place in 6 seconds. People do actions and people react to those actions. That's just how it is. And that's how I see it. So
Okay.
yeah.
So as the arbiter here, the old man will step in. My normal in real life role-playing group has been at a minimum of 7 people and a max of 12 people for the past 20 years. I can tell you from experience how to make combat go faster. It's very simple. Know what you're doing. If you want to talk, that's fine. I give everybody a single sentence. If you want to say something to another player, can you get it out in a single sentence? Yes. Not a diatribe. You're not going, hey, run over here, and if you get over there, then you can hide, and then you can shoot the... No. Hey, go over there and hide. It's probably not good to yell out across the battlefield because then everybody knows that the guy's going to run and hide. But that's what you said. And I have been playing long enough that we used to have this rule called game say, game do. Whereas if your character said it, your character did it.
Yep.
So it was really, we sat down at the table, it was, you had out-of-character conversations and in-character conversations, and those are 2 different things. If your character said it, your character did it. And believe me, you learn real quick how to play your character. And I have done this for so many years, and most of the people in the group, you learn to, yes, you have a lot of options, right? If you're a spellcaster, you have a lot of options. And you want them to describe their attacks if they're the kind of person that wants to, or if you're a DM that likes to do that too. But it doesn't matter how much exposition they get if they're still, like Wendy said, taking a half an hour between turns. I have been in those situations where there were 12 of us at the table and went on a 2. I went and watched TV. I could go play Worms on the NES because it was literally going to take a half hour, 45 minutes for my turn to come around. And then we started finishing up and started doing this where it's, yes, the turn takes 6 seconds. Have a good idea. Like, you don't have to know exactly what you're doing, but have a good basic plan. I'm going to cast a spell on this person. Cool. That person's dead. Well, then I guess I'll target the other guy. Okay, I'm going to attack the big bad guy. Okay, I'm going to kind of think it out while your turn is coming around, because you're still going to have 5 or 6 minutes between each turn. Like, there's Tuesday night, there's 5 of us? Right?
Yeah, altogether.
Yeah, there's 5 of us. Plus all the monsters that Mark has to run. Our combats don't take that long. Not really. It's learning to impress upon your players that combat is fluid and that they need to learn how to do that. And eventually the players, even the newer players that I have now, the newer players we've added to our group over the years, have, like Alex said, there's 4 or 5 sessions and then they're in the groove, like, cool, here you go.
I think the important things to remember is that everybody having a firm grasp of how the rules and how the flow of combat's supposed to work is paramount.
Yeah. I mean, obviously people aren't going to react. They're not going to have a decent idea as to what they're supposed to be doing very quickly if they don't even know the rules all that well.
Yeah.
But that would be something that would be partially addressed in session 0 to begin with, and then over the course of about 5 to 7 sessions, they should probably
You should know your character.
See, because the largest group I ever ran was 14 people, and that was for 7 sessions in a row.
Yeah.
And the reason that's where I learned about the doubling up trick, and also the fact that Rick, you've been in the military, right?
Yeah.
You can get a fuckload of words out in 6 seconds.
Well, but that depends on whether you're a spellcaster. That's
no, I'm talking about issuing battlefield commands.
well, yes, but the issue becomes is this character, what's the character's intelligence score? If you're telling me that the barbarian with an 8 is issuing commands on the battlefield, you're full of crap. That's just garbage. I'm not.
This goes back to
That's
before.
bad
Not everybody
role playing.
has the experience to be able to understand orders given in that amount of time.
Yeah.
Like in the military, it's all like jumbled together into like a particular sound. It's like
If you think most of the people in,
and then
no, first of all, no, it's not. And second of all, if you think most of the people in the military have an intelligence above an 8, I got news for you, pal.
Hey, all army manuals are written at an 8th. All army manuals up until 2005 are written at an 8th grade level.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it.
I'm just
100% true.
the idea that people are just going to understand every command told to them in a span of 6 seconds, they're just not.
Yeah.
Most people aren't going to be experienced in taking commands, period.
No.
Let alone understanding what you're trying to tell them.
Okay, so we're at the 3 hour and 2 minute mark. I'm going to call this for tonight because my wife would like to come upstairs and go to bed eventually. I want to thank everybody who showed up tonight. We had a lot of viewers tonight. It was great. A lot of DMs. Again, all of you who are a DM in chat, hit up the Discord. Send me a message if you want to be on. I love having new opinions. It is absolutely imperative that we get multiple, which is why I started this, because all DMs should have the ability to go, oh, Alex had a good idea. Oh, but Ash had another idea too that would work well with that, so I think I'll try both of those together. Or Rick and Ack had a good idea, and they kind of agreed on it, so I'll try that one. One big shot. This is an open forum for DMs. I try to keep it at about 4 per session, because more than that, it's at 4. It's still hard to keep us from, because we're DMs and we like to talk a lot, and I especially like to talk a shit ton. So,
No.
oh yeah, totally. I'm a talker. I'll talk forever. But it is a matter of. I want to get as many perspectives here as we can, because it may seem like Isbeth has only been DMing for 6 months, but she has insights as that us older DMs have forgotten, because we're not new anymore. We've become those jaded old guys, and we're like, oh yeah, I remember.
Not necessarily forgotten, but like as technology changes and the way in which we DM changes, the way in which people get introduced to it changes as well. And we have learned in a particular fashion, and sometimes that means there's old habits that we have that just don't work anymore, and they need to be adapted for like modern ways of DMing. Those are things to bear in mind as well. Yeah.
So yes, I have an open invitation to all DMs. You just hit me up on Discord and let me know. We start at 10 o'clock. I prefer everybody be here about 10 minutes early. I don't mind if you're streaming or you want to pop in. You can't pop in until 11. Like Ash runs her stream tonight, right?
I do a shorter one that ends like maybe an hour before, so I get to squeeze in dinner. But yeah.
Yeah. So you can pop in at the break. I do normally do one break at the like hour and a half mark or so. So there's that. We're going to go ahead and let Axe start his shout out real quick. Quick shout out to your channel and what you're doing, Axe.
All right. I run the Gems of Blood campaign.
7 p.m. Eastern on Mondays in the Mark Knight's setting of Oregon. My Twitch channel is at Ectharian. Basically, anywhere you see my username on the, that's me. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Alex?
I am Big Lundy. I run the Gods, Ghouls, and Grim campaign on Tabor Snapping's channel on Mondays at 7 p.m. and I roll the role-playing Douchebags campaign on Thursday nights at TVRNA's channel, also on Twitch. If you would like to get a hold of me for any sort of DMing, then you can get a hold of me on either Loophole King's Discord or Mark Knight's Discord, or you can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/big_Lundy. And yeah, that's me.
Ash?
I'm Ash, the DM of Not Awesome. We do our live stream session every other Sunday at 5:30 Pacific Daylight Time, which is also 8:30 Eastern Time. And I also do 2 other shows, a DM Compendium, which I take you along with what I do behind the scenes as a DM using OneNote. And then I also do map making on Fridays. And if you have a map you would like to request, let me know and we can make that happen.
All right. And I am the Loophole King. My name is Rick. I want to thank everyone. My little plug is, of course, I do DMs After Dark with the help of all my DM friends and the community. We do that at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm not good at figuring out what the other time zones are, so she'll just have to figure that out. And we normally go for about 2 to 3 hours on Wednesday nights, and then on Tuesday nights I am playing Serrani in Mark Knight's game Dark God Arises, and we start at 5:30. Yes? I'm bad with times.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, we start at 5:30 Eastern Time over on the DM Mark Knight's channel. And then on Sunday nights at 5:30, you can see me DMing a game, and Alex is playing, and Dark Dreamer, who is in our chat at the moment, and the DM Mark Knight, and another DM friend of mine, Dave, are all playing in a game called What Lies Ahead, which is set in the long ago past of the Oregon setting from DM Mark Knight. Also, I'm going to be doing some more map making as well. I have done some. I've done as many as I can do right now for Mark because he doesn't have anything else scheduled for me, so I can start working on some other maps. So I do that. I also play Magic the Gathering at random times on Arena. Most of the time I do it with my daughter Emily, Miss M. And you can also see me play Battletech every now and then when I get the hankering for it. I am slowly starting this Twitch channel, so I am working my way into having more than one stream. That being said, please visit all of our friends. Please visit Nat Awesome, Nat 30, Lundy, Ectharion, Dr. Diz, who's in chat, Manic DM, great bunch of people we have here. We love them. I want to thank everybody who followed. If you'd like to support this channel is supported by you, the viewer, and the players. So you can donate directly down below the stream. You can visit us at Patreon, The Loophole King. You can watch us on Twitter. You can go over to YouTube and see past episodes of my magic streams, my world building streams, and the first episode of What Lies Beyond, which is hilarious. You should really see that. Also, there's a donation box down below that you can see down there, which is for Extra Life. Extra Life is a charity that donates to the Children's Miracle Network, which gives money to children's hospitals all around the U.S. The donations, we're trying to raise $1,000 for the Cincinnati Children's Hospital here in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is where near I live. And they have taken care of my 2 oldest children, and they take care of one of my friend's children on a regular basis. They operate almost entirely on donations and grants. So please donate what you can. $1, $5, $10. We're trying to get to 1,000, and we greatly appreciate it. Also, please visit my sponsor, Comic Book World, at comicbookworld.com for all your tabletop and role-playing needs. They ship into the lower 48 and are looking into starting to ship outside of the U.S. If you guys, those of you who live outside the U.S. want orders, we can get more of them to make it worthwhile. If you're, you send them an email and ask them and tell them that Rick sent you, they'll probably ship your stuff there. And with the final note, please, 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 I beg you, buy from your local gaming store. Please. Support your local gaming store. They are the ones that helped us get Dungeons & Dragons when nobody else would. They are the ones who let us hang out and be nerds all the time whenever we wanted and didn't judge us. So as much as, I'm not telling you not to buy from big box stores, but if you're going to buy something that is a comic book, role-playing dice, tabletop games, board games of any kind, go to your local gaming store. Please do that. And that's it for tonight. Lundy, can you hook me up?
If you are viewing on YouTube, do be sure to hit that like button and that subscribe button, and of course the notification bell to ensure that all new subscription feeds are made to be visible to you.
And don't forget to go visit everybody else's YouTube page, and don't forget to share those YouTube videos. Get this out as much as possible.
Yep.
Hey, once again, thank you. We couldn't do this without you guys. We appreciate all your help. We do have a couple of oh, I forgot the contest. There is a contest here on my channel. I forgot the contest. I have a contest here on my channel. When I reach 50 followers, the first 50 followers, I'm raffling off a small block of D&D minis. It's going to be a random block that is going to be courtesy of Comic Book World. Also, over on the DM Mark Nice channel, he is still trying to get to 200 subscribers. When he gets to 200 subscribers, the person who has gifted the most subs, will get, from Comic Book World, a copy of the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount. We will ship that to you wherever you are on the planet. So if you're the top gifter, I think David is still in the lead, but not by much. So we'll see how that goes. There's also some other players who are gifting a bunch of other things. I think there's a mug to be given out for second place. Lundy, is that correct?
Is it a mug?
It's a horn. It's a drinking horn.
Yeah, yes, right.
Yes. As Mark said, yes. When Mark hits 200 subscribers, he will dab for an entire 10 seconds on film, on camera, live. We're hoping, we want to get there. That's what we're shooting for. We love Mark. We love everybody. So my final thoughts to you is, as I go to the final thought close-up, be kind to everyone, and may all your rolls be crits. Signing off from the dark side of the moon here in the Blue Cheese Room, I'm the Loophole King. Thank you and good night.
Bye, guys.
Bye.